Hello everyone. Welcome to another live stream with me, 320 Sim Pilot. Welcome. Today we are in a whole other part of the world. We're going to fly from here in Buenos Aires over to Santiago. So we're going from Argentina over to Chile, somewhere we've never flown in the simulator before, and something I thought would be quite enjoyable to do. Should have some nice scenery. It's a lovely time of year down here. It's summer, as you can see, so should have nice weather. We're on live weather and we're on live time for once. The advantage of flying in the west or west of the UK anyway. So should be good fun. We're also going to be taking the Horizon Simulation 7879 for this stream. So this is a super add-on with only a couple of little bugs in it that I'd like to see worked out, but it's still absolutely fantastic what they've done. And we're also going to get to enjoy this new livery from Paddy, which is the conversion of the Manta Airlines livery into the 787. Now, Paddy's been working hard on this one, and it's full of, you've got lots of excellent texturing to go along with the excellent detail from Horizon, but also, as you can see, as we look down the wing, the infamous speed tape situation that you get on some 787s. This is actually left over from, well, it's to do with the paint. I'm sure you all know that now. You can sometimes board a brand new, or not, they're not all that new anymore. Some of them are 10 years old, but if you board a 787, it wouldn't be uncommon, or a 350, to see this sort of issue. The reason is the paint's required to protect the composite surfaces on the wings. So on an older airplane, the paint peels off, and there's usually just a sort of anti-rust layer underneath, anti-corrosion. But what you get on the 787 would be the bare composite, and because of course that's not going to rust, so it doesn't need anti-rust. And what will happen is that will get damaged by UV rays, so it needs protecting. Hence, the wings on 787s are usually white, but Paddy does this really nice. I like it, this sort of gunmetal grey colour on the wings often. So yeah, this one also has been well used and well loved all around. You can see the streaks around the door and the windows. Now that's very common. You see that on almost any airplane that isn't more than a week old. It's surprising how much grime just runs down the windows when they're parked on the stand. But anyway, there we go. So jumping into the chat, welcome to you all. Thank you so much for coming along. Fade Lemon, happy birthday to you. Sea Eagle, thanks for coming. Patrick Hampson, Chick Point as well. Great to have you here. Dougal, thanks for coming along and moderating, and Alexander as well. Mr. Cyclone, Road to Fear, Blue, Autothrust, great to see you all. C. Gonzalez, hello to you. Dougal likes the intro. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I enjoy the intro too. It helps me calm down before a stream. Ariel, it's good to have you. Ed Haslam, good to see you, Ed. I hope you're doing very well. Rosie McGowan has finally managed to start. Yeah, I've done a slightly later start today. We're on, the airplane's powered up. Not on the APU, but it is powered up. We're going to jump in. We're going to get the route loaded. I've got all the weights and fuel loaded already, so I'm determined to get in the air under an hour today. You can count me on that. We started on time for the first time in a long time as well. You notice 1700 UTC. Dave Guyman, great to have you as well. You are indeed in time. Flight Dispatch 320, good to see you again. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I'm happy with the streams. We're getting the streams back. They've been a little bit more regular, so that's been good fun. It's nice. I don't like leaving the channel unattended, as it were, for too long. I really enjoy doing these, and I don't like going without these streams really. 6 is rated 7 because 789. There we go. Indeed, list them in. Good to see you as well. Will you ever change the channel's name to 78 Sim Pilot? It's still up for debate. The current plan is no. We'll stick with 320 Sim Pilot. I wouldn't mind the opportunity to change the name. As 320 Sim Pilot, 320 is now not so relevant, although it's still relevant, but it's not where the channel is right now. But a lot of people come to the channel still through the 320 videos, so it sort of still works for them. But there we go. Has been good to see Captain Will. Nice livery. Thanks, Captain Will. It is indeed, as Chickpoint says, this is the original. Great audio. No, I haven't tweaked it. I'm speaking a bit louder, but I'm still using I really highly rate the mic. I got a Razer microphone. It's very good. Very, very good. Thomas says, no jokes about rapid decompression now. Indeed, we're not going to do that. Good. So, what's the Manta Airlines ICAO code? Is MXZ, Patrick. MXZ is our code for this one. So we are on VATSIM. There won't be any controllers, I suspect. It's sort of mid-afternoon down here. But yeah, and it's quite a... well, it's just mid-afternoon. I suspect people are at work. There we go. So this livery, this one is, like I say, Paddy has created this one. Paddy has tweaked it. I actually think, considering I built this livery originally for the A321 in X-Plane, the TOLIS, which is where we started. So I designed that with the help of my excellent graphic designer who does all the thumbnails. And this I'm surprised how well it's transferred onto the 787. I'm sure Paddy's done some careful tweaks to make sure it has. But yeah, also the slightly metallic sort of blue that Paddy manages to do is really, really nice. That's definitely nicer than my original. I just had flat colours. I didn't know how to do it like this, but yeah, I really like that. We've also got, it says Manta Airlines instead of 320 Sim Pilot, which the original one had. So that's been changed over, which I think makes sense, especially as it's on a 787. Also, the outline of this grey, got this nice pink outline, but it's just much neater than my original one. But for some reason, I really like it. I think it works really well. Things I really like about the livery right from the start, I like the engines. I really like having the 3 colours like that. I don't know why. I think that's always worked for me. And I like the tail. Obviously, we always talk about this, but yeah, and Paddy always gets it right. It's got to be a completely level line along the bottom of that, a la Singapore Airlines. And there is the Busquets beautiful livery that we used for one of our streams just before I moved over to this aircraft. So that's quite fitting. There it is. Excellent. And it's GSIMD. It's slightly different from SimX, our usual aircraft. Love it. Love it. Absolute right shade of neon pink as well. But yeah, I think it looks good. I think I think a 787 in this livery wouldn't be too get the grime. Yeah, I think 787 in this livery wouldn't be too amiss. Oh yeah, and you've got, of course, Paddy made that logo, the old style logo over here. When are you going to stream with the 7810? The 7810 is basically the same. It just lacks the visual fidelity of the Horizon and the Kuo. I'm going to use the Kuo one soon. I want to get a video out with that. But look at the streaks coming off the temperature and pitos. Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, this is a particularly dirty airplane. This would have been left, I imagine, on a container ship for a while to look quite this bad. But yeah, and under the wings. And that does happen. But there we go. Right. 1187 Sim Pilot 787 plus 320. Yeah, we could do. And we need the Tord wants a torque wrench for the trip. There we go. Oh dear. Piano Learner says, I'll stick with the name. You still fly 320 in the sim, so you'd be a 320 Sim Pilot. Indeed, yeah, indeed. Right. Let's go. Time to swap over into the flight deck. So this is how you'll typically board the 787. It's very, very rare to find a 787 depowered. Reason for that is 787s does not like being depowered. And I've said this before, but the Airbus doesn't like it. No airplane really likes it. They get cold and upset. But short-haul aircraft are a little more robust. The 787, and I say robust in the sense of being turned off and on all the time. The Airbus is still pretty temperamental if it was left. If it's left cold and wet, then you could get all sorts like fire sensors that got damp in them and things like that, they'd get confused. So the 787 is heavily electrically based. So if you remove electrical power from it, it really does upset it. You can do it, but there's a few systems that run in the background. It's a very complicated machine. For example, for 20 minutes after you park up and shut down the engines, you have to have ground power. You can't shut down the airplane because there's a cooling system that's cooling down the electronics in the rear avionics bay. There's 2 big avionics bays on the 787. And that's, you can see actually the name of it here. We've got liquid cooling. There you go. It's part of the PEC. I think it's the PEC system, but it's really, really important. And if you just shut down, it doesn't get the chance to cool the parts, and then they can all just get damaged, and you can just absolutely cause a lot of damage to these airplanes. So they like to have power as long as they can. So yeah, it's unlikely to get on one cold. Also, short-haul aircraft spend much more of their time on the ground. They spend their time on turnarounds, but also at the end of the day, they'll sit on the ground overnight, typically, wherever you are, because no one's flying around from, let's say, no one takes off at midnight and lands at 4 a.m. on short-haul normally around Europe, and I imagine in America as well. I'm sure it does happen occasionally, but a lot of airplanes are parked up for the night. Long-haul aircraft, that doesn't happen. They spend 2 hours-ish on the ground, and then they're off again. That's how they make so much money. They're always flying. And they have a lot more utilization time than you get on a short-haul A320 aircraft. Listerman says, the 787 doesn't like being depowered, but at the same time needs to be rebooted every 51 days. Wow, I don't know that. I haven't heard that. I would believe it. I can understand it would need to, but yeah, I hadn't heard that one. Interesting. But yeah, so we are going to typically get on board like this. Now, what will often happen is you'll also get on and find these are on. Engineers love aligning the IRSs. So they often do that for you, which is very nice. But it's worth checking when it was done, because you don't want to take over an airplane where these were left on by accident and then set off halfway around the planet. Because as you can imagine, we go as far as it's possible to go, really, using inertial navigation, and we really want them aligned properly. Unlike the Airbus, it's not so obvious when they've misaligned on this aircraft. They're constantly updating and repositioning themselves, but so they're very good. I'm sure you'd actually be fine if you left them on, but that's not the procedure. You've got to realign them, and you can't just do off and on for 5 seconds. You need them off for 30 seconds, and then you can put them back on. Are you going to fly the PMDG 777? I absolutely hope to. Yeah, it's the same flight deck. It's the same type rating. It's on my license. And I know plenty of 777 pilots, so I would love to fly that, and hopefully we can get some tutorials out as well if I can get some of them on boards, because yeah, it uses the same procedures and memory items. I need to finish my 7.8 series as well. But yeah, right. So yeah, those would be on. Battery would need to go on, and then things sort of wrong in the horizon, or I should say just the default 7.8 is that the windshield heats, we just leave those on. That's absolutely fine. The pump should be off. That is correct. Seatbelt signs can go on because we are fueled up now. Let's jump in the seat, actually, that'd be easier. Then we're going to have the nav lights on, logo lights can stay off, wing lights off. That's all we need for now. Fuel pumps will all be off, fuel tests and so on stowed, everything else in normal. There's really not a lot to do. We don't do fire tests, we don't do cargo smoke tests, we don't do any of that. This would be off, which is in the down position. That's not modeled correctly at the moment, but there we go. Oh yeah, and you'd find that this lower fan's off, so we could turn it on now. And I'm going to turn the packs on because I'm going to use them in a minute. They won't turn on using ground power normally, but it is possible for them to, which is again very unusual. So what the real aircraft would say now is load shed. It would tell you it's not managing to supply air. This is sort of suggesting the packs are working, but the cabin air compressors aren't working, as you can see, so there wouldn't actually be any air coming out until we turn on the APU. In some circumstances it can provide air conditioning just on the ground power unit though, especially if they're very good. Good. Right. It's typical that, you know, one of the pilots who's going to be flying would have loaded up the box and then gone outside to do the walk around. So let's get the box loaded up. So starting on a nitref index, we should be in ident. Check it's all correct. Good enough database. Yes, it is. You check your performance and factors and so on. Pause on it. We are starting from, oh, let me get some lights on for you all. There we go. Get the dome light on nice and bright. I'm going to crank up the master brightness as well. It's a shame the storm doesn't work. That gets used quite a lot. It's designed for when there's a storm, but it's actually just a really easy way. When you get into the flight deck, it just brightens everything up, and it's good for just allowing you to have like a fully lit flight deck. And you'll do that right up until you've waved off the ground crew, and then you can turn it off, and everything goes dark rather than having to adjust things separately. But anyway, there we go. Right, we are starting it. SAEZ. There it is. Matches our position. All looking good. The airplane doesn't need us to set it. It's happy. Route. Requests. We have it loaded in, which is great. Pietrek says, quick question, as we're in the cockpit already, where do you set up trim? I couldn't find any wheel button or electronic switch. So there's a trimmer switch on the yoke, and you can assign it to keys. So that's how you run the trimmer. There's no wheel to do. Yeah, good spot. We do have another trim, the alternate pitch trim down here, which you could also use. That would run the trimmer, but yeah, which is visible here, the stab trim. Right, there's the route. It's ready to load. So I'm going to say thank you. Load. It can take a while to load in if you do a long route. We have a nice short route today. So there we go to SCEL, Manta 337. Not worry about the runway. And departures, arrival. Well, we'll do that in just a moment. So we'll execute the route. Let's just check it's gone in. There it is, starting at Irino. Let's load up. I knew I'd forgotten something. Always the charts. Always the charts. A cold weather airports. What warms the cabin if the plane is on the ground for a long time? So as long as the airplane has ground power, the flight deck certainly stays pretty warm. I've never gotten onto a cold 787. There's so much, let me just load this one, even easier. There's so much heating going on with all the avionics. You would be amazed at the amount of heat generated in this flight deck. That's not loaded at all though. No. Let's load it properly. But other than that, Nothing, basically. The airplane's heated by its leftover heat. And like I say, it's only on the ground for 2 hours. So unless it's really, really cold, it's unlikely to cool down too much. Especially if you start filling out with passengers again, it will warm up very quickly. Yeah, Airbuses, you did used to get on cold. Short-haul aircraft are allowed to get cold, but this airplane is just unlikely. But if you needed to, you would do what I've just done here. Plug in power and you can turn on the packs. You don't necessarily need the APU, but if there isn't enough electrical power in the system, then you'll start up the APU. So let's do that now. You hold it at the start for a second, goes back to on, and it just sits there, and it will do all its stuff, which you can actually see here. APU. I mean, this is such I can't get over this. This is the included 7.8 avionics. Absolutely brilliant. Right, Toril departure is what we're expecting. Toril, and I assume we're then going to connect that up to Reno. Right, Melson, good to see you. Thanks very much for coming along. I'm glad to be back too. It's good to get a few more streams in than we've been managing. Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, this is only my this is the third one since coming back. Right. Wind 040, 4 knots where we are in Buenos Aires. Towering cumulus, 32 degrees. Wow, it's warm. So actually, we're very much going to be needing this to cool down the cabin. You'd be getting complaints. Yeah, look at that. And now you can see, because I've got the APU generators online, we have the cabin air compressors feeding the packs. So now we would be getting cold air. You'd definitely cool that down. You wouldn't board passengers really at over 30 degrees unless you knew it was going to come down very quickly. I flew on a Dash 10 a couple of months back, sat over the wing. The flex during takeoff was truly amazing engineering, says Flight Dispatch. It is. And think of all the fuel pumps and pipes and hydraulics. Well, there's not many hydraulics, but think of it all flexing away inside of there. And it's all got to be completely reliable for, you know, the entire flight, no matter how turbulent it gets. I mean, it's amazing, really. It is amazing. So we're going to depart off an easterly runway. Let's have a look. Which runway do we fancy? It's going to be our choice, really. Should we go off 1-1? I think we'll do 1-1. And then back round. Give me the easiest taxi as well. Well, we could do 1-7. 1-1 and then away. Oh, there it is. So actually we're going to go to EZE24 and then out to Reno. So we're doing a Toril arrival, but we're going to do this extra little section here. Good. So let's do that. Let's do, yeah, we'll do 1-1. When I flew United, the cabin was cold. Well, once you're in flight, it's often cold because cabins are kept cooler. It's better to be on the slightly cooler side than on the too hot side. If it's cooler, the cabin crew can work better without overheating because obviously they've got to run around a lot in the cabin or work hard in the cabin. But also passengers get sick much more easily when it's hot. If it's too hot and the plane's shaking around, people get sick, and also they can't sleep when it's too hot as well. All of these things do happen. Sunny, no, it's not difficult getting used to a yoke. I flew, you always learn on a yoke, so it's fine. And swapping from a yoke to a side stick was fine as well. It's easier than you'd think. They are both just intuitive ways of flying an aeroplane, pretty much. I'd say a stick is more intuitive, but a yoke is how you learn, so really not too bad. Right, anyway, let me carry on. I'm getting distracted. Toril. Reno. There we go. Then we'll bring up the ND. Now, I do find this slightly more difficult than I used to on the Airbus. There's our plan, which looks good. So we'll execute that. And there it is. Exclamation mark route in the chat, by the way. It looks like the stream bot is alive. Yes, so yeah, the route will come up. Also, if you want this livery, it's available on flightsim.to and put exclamation mark livery and you'll get to see this. If you are watching and enjoying, do please leave a like. It makes a big difference to the channel. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Dougal. Thank you. Okay, so that is the departure loaded in, and we can see the plan, of course. You go, well, you can use this dial. It doesn't work, but you can click plan as well using the cursor, which is again easier in the sim than real airplane. In the real airplane, you tend to use these hardware buttons. So this one, and you can use this cursor control as well because the mouse can be a little bit fiddly. But obviously in the sim, the mouse is absolutely lovely. Let's get rid of the iCast so we can see it in a nice big screen. Someone paid a lot of money for a nice big screen, and there it is. Out, EZE12 or D4, right, D10 arc, which will be Juliet, and out to EZE24, 15, and then Reno. If I go to legs, and then it won't show you the plan, even though we've selected plan, it won't do anything until we click step, and then you can step through. What you can do as well is jump through by pressing next page, which is quite handy. We don't put in an arrival yet. It's different from the Airbus. We do not put in the arrival. Okay, let's go back to map. That's the route done. And then renav, there's not much to put in there. Yeah, 320.85, that's all fine. Nav red, I'm going to leave to auto tune. It's tuning the Buenos Aires VOR, which is exactly what you'd expect. ADFs, not worried about. They only appear down here anyway. They were, I think, a bit of an afterthought on this airplane, but there we go. Right, let's load up the flight plan. I say afterthought. I think they just weren't expected to be used, really, and I don't think they are used. So alternate is Charlie Charlie Papa. We have final reserve fuel of 2 tons. So 5.6 with the alternate fuel is our reserves. We'll put 2,000 in for the steps. 19.9 tons fuel. We needed 16.5 tons, so I've put us a bit of extra fuel just in case whatever happens at the other end. And now we can load up the weight. So we go to our zero fuel weight, which we can just click on, and it drags it in, gives us a takeoff weight 173 tons. Light for a 787, to be honest, but that's because we just only have 20 tons of fuel, not 60, 70, 80 tons. Good. Cruising, it wants to go to flight level 400. We were planning 400, so that's correct. And cost index of 129. Excellent. Flight time only 2 hours today, so that's good news. CG will adjust later. Okay, good. Thrust limit 31 degrees is correct for the outside. And then we're on to the takeoff performance. So now that's all done. So I can go out and do the walk around, and we'll just run through the flows inside. So we've done the overhead panel, which is great news. We are on the APU. Ground power can all be disconnected now. You wouldn't see the aft. That's very, very rarely used. Ah, we have controllers. Fantastic. Excellent news. Let's see what runway they're using. Departure arrival runway 11. Excellent. Thank you very much. That's helped me out. Oh, gear handles up. Good spot. That is my hardware. Thank you very much. Yeah. So that's obviously something you do before powering up the airplane. But yeah, that's a hardware bug with my gear lever being in the up position. Working on a video earlier today. The 777 was cold on the ground. So yeah, I mean, they can get cold. It's just I personally haven't experienced it yet. But there we go. Hardest part of the 787 type rating. Hardest part of the 787 is the vertical modes. That's what my next video will be on. Captain Wazza is going to go land a Mad Dog in Olbia. Fantastic. Enjoy. I think we've done that on the stream. Does the wing flex help with turbulence? I think it does. Yes, I think it does. Okay. Right. Let's continue. So we have done the overhead. Then you do your flow. So we do the oxygen mask. You power on your EFB. Initialize the flight. It should then say close flight. It doesn't. But there we go. We go to performance. That's coming up next. And then we move in. Make sure that this is all set up correctly. What do they use in Buenos Aires? Altimeter 1009. Which I don't. So that's a QNH. Yep. That's an unusual combination. But yeah. 1009. So let's set that. 1009. 1009. 1009. Good. These are all correct. Correct time and date. We can move the heading. Well, we won't do that yet. We'll let the other person do that. Moving across, we would just make sure that the disengage is in. You can have the auto throttle arms, which is armed. We're not going to touch anything else because that's going to be for the other pilot. And you turn on your flight director. They are connected here, but obviously they're not in the real airplane. So the other pilot would turn on theirs when they were happy. The reason we have to do this is, I don't know if you remember, there was an incident with I think it was a 777, where the flight directors weren't cycled off and on during the turnaround. As a result, the airplane had, underneath all of these modes, had captured the level. So after takeoff, the flight directors just commanded level flight as opposed to the toga mode it should have been in. So they have to have been off. So we don't turn on the other person's flight director, so that, yeah, you want to know that you've had them off, basically. So anyway, toga, which is correct. Very basic modes, really. What do you dislike about the 787 compared to the A320? That's going to be something like... it'll be to do with the vertical modes. I think I've already complained many times, but yeah, we'll see more of that. Anyway, good. Done up there. Then we want to go into our systems page. We would have already checked this when we boarded to make sure that we've got things like liquid cooling, hydraulic fluids, and we will look at our engines, and we got engine oil 18 and 20. So that's all good. You also press cancel recall, and you hold that down. You want to make sure that you don't get any red warnings, because if you have this displayed and then you press that and something had been exceeded on the previous flight, it would now show it. So nothing exceeded. That's good news. And there are also some comm stuff we can do which aren't simulated here, and we'll go to checklists, resets, reset all. Good stuff. Auto brake down to 0. We've set up this. We've got the gear down. We have eventually spotted that. Speed brake retracted. Thrust levers idle. Flaps up. Alternate switch would not say alternate. That should be just off, off. Parking brake is on. Alternate trim off. Stab trim norm. Fuel cutoff off. Fire handles are in. I say handles, they're switches. And then you'd be on the VHFs down here. And you can make sure that the GPS is working, the transponder is working, and put it above for departure. There we go. Oh, doesn't work, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter where you set that, really. And we're in a good place. Good stuff. Right, now I'm going to go over here and think about the performance. So we've got a dry runway. We've got winds 040 at 4, so it is easterly, 300 to 110. So we'll put in the worst case 300 at 4. So 4 knots of tailwinds. It's absolutely roasting outside. Temperature 32. It is below 40, so we can still start both engines. QNH 1010. There's the weights. And what we haven't done, all right, let's sort the rest out. So optimum, anti-ice off, optimum thrust rating. We're going to use the maximum flex. And we are going to just make sure we got the trim. Trim is 28. And then we're going to calculate. Look at these speeds. Wow, that's the lowest speeds I've ever seen. 138, 143, 151. 173 tons. I mean, we are so light for a Dash 9. Let me just look. Why is our zero fuel weight? 153 plus 20 tons, 173. Yeah, we just don't have any fuel on board. That's fine. That's the speeds it wants. So we're going to send the outputs. Yeah, there's several things missing between this and the real airplane. I could do a video talking about it. I don't want to make it look like I think it's a problem. There's a remarkable amount of things that are correct, which I think is brilliant. The fact we can do this flow and it makes sense to me shows how good this is. So we're going to accept those speeds. FNC pre-flight complete, very important. And we can now take our V2, 151. I'm going to make sure we have DTO2. So we're using a heavy D rate here. This is the lowest power we can use. Look at this. We've got a high temperature, 53 degrees. We're using Takeoff 2. So we're taking 20% off the engine power to start with. So we are going to use a very little power on takeoff. And we're still going to take off very early. So Takeoff 2, temperature plus 53. It's still showing up here. And then we take our V2, 151. And we'll put that in here. No, don't push in. There we go. I've already forgotten it. 1. Good. Then we want to have LNAV and VNAV armed. We want a heading of 110. Easiest way to get there is going to be if I press the other direction. I don't know London Controller. I've heard of London Controller. I don't know London Controller. Clint Smith wants to check the emergency door bolts type. So, it's an interesting point. There are no plug type doors on 787s. 787 is just doors, and they're all full size. If you look, we've got no smaller overwing exits, emergency exits. There's no overwing exits on the 78. 777s do, but we don't. They're all big doors, so no no concerns there on this one anyway. Good. And we're just going to check our stop altitudes. No, we'll get our clearance to air traffic control, I think. 250 knots below 100, that's absolutely fine. We'll easily be able to do that clean today. There are some departures. If you take off at max weight in 787, especially a 9 or a 10, then your clean speed could be above 250. You have to just go a little bit faster, up to 260 knots-ish. Just tell air traffic control if you need to. Good. Right, 10 miles round there. So altitude to come from air traffic. I'm going to remind myself by putting in a strange one. There we go. ATM is assumed temperature method, I believe, Ed. It's a great question. I knew someone would ask. So we're saying we want to use the maximum assumed temperature, which is also what it says here. Now this is referring to this 53 degrees. So we're saying to use the rating of optimum. So we're using the takeoff 2 rating, and then we're using the assumed temperature at 53. So we're taking 20% off the engines, and then we're telling the engines it's hotter than it is to get even less thrust out of them. It seems crazy, but it's just efficient, and it gives the engines more reliability for the rest of their life, so it makes sense, really. And less noise, less fuel. Glad you enjoyed the video, Stark Studios. Thank you. They're all plug type. No door plugs, though. Only ever an option for the 777-300 and 747 to actually plug it. Yes. That was a... I mean, I don't know enough about that door, but yeah, it was a plug type door. But I think what they mean is it was an empty plug, as in not a door, but it was never. I don't think it could be opened, as it were. I think it was just a plug, a blank door. That's my understanding. I don't know if that's correct. Right, good. So. That's done. We'll get our clearance shortly. We're on the APU. We've got the belts on. We've got the fuel loaded down here at 20 tons, which is correct. Fuel temperature 24, 31 outside, yeah. See how the cabin's doing. It should have cooled down by now. Good stuff. Trim will come later. I think we're pretty much there. Put the legs page there. By the way, this BFD is the wrong way around. This auxiliary display should be on the right-hand side. But there we go. We won't complain too much. So we'll go to normal, pre-flight. It would automatically take you there. Parking brake is set. Fuel control cutoff. Pre-flight check is complete. The next one is the before start checklist, which we will do once we've pressurized. You see it has the trim in there. Now, I reckon you could quite happily set the trim right now, because it's run on electric motors, not hydraulics. But there we go. That's just left over, because on the 777... you would not be able to do that. And like I say, same type rating, same procedures. And I say same, I really do, I mean it. I think there's very few that are different. And if they are, they're minor things. Right, let's tune ATC. 12175. Should go into the active box, but there we go. Goods. And we are Manta 337. We've got information. Alpha. And weirdly, they say altimeter 199. It's a funny combination. Which reads 80 feet, which we know is correct. Buenos Aires, good afternoon. Manta 337, Boeing 7879. We have information Alpha, altimeter 1009, request clearance, Santiago.
Mike X-Ray Zulu 337, good evening. Are you ready to copy clearance?
Ready to copy clearance, Manta 337.
So 337, you're clear 6 Santiago Asphalt, Plalo 400 until to sir. Departure to Rule 1, Transition Urino, runway news 11, initial clearance 050 and squawk 0467.
Thank you. Cleared to Santiago. Runway 11, Toro 1, Arena transition. Initial cleared level, flight level 5050, squawk 0467, Manta 337.
337, repack correct, report and ready for push start.
Wilco, Manta 337. Good. So we'll go to transponder.
Ground speed, 7 whiskey, request push and start.
0467.
7 whiskey.
That goes in there.
Approved, facing south, report for taxi.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
50.
facing
That is to
south?
become a flight level. Just check it's got the correct transition altitude in. 18,000. So if we're going to flight level 50, I'm going to put 4,000 in. Let me just see what's going on over here.
Yes, can you just confirm the direction you want us to face?
Sorry, push start approved.
Yep, 3,000. Wow, that's a low transition altitude. So now it will warn us if we're on QNH still, when we should be on the altimeter. That's right, on standard.
Correct, thank you.
As ever, you let me know how the audio is. Oh, there you go, Lauren V says, so there is confusion about door plug, and so on. Yeah. Well, this is what we get when the entire world now is trying to comment on something that only a few people know about, really. It's, that is a very specific part of an airplane, and it's a specific model of the airplane that has it. Airbuses have different levels of emergency exits as well, whether they have these same plugs, type doors, door plugs, It's very specific, and now we're going to have all sorts of journalists and broadcasters all talking about it. So it's inevitably, ultimately it won't matter. The NTSB will figure it out, and we'll work out what happens. And by the time they do, no one's going to even notice or care about the answer in the mainstream. That's always what happens. These stories are just big things as they are in the moment. Good. So we've done that. We've set that up. Now we would check with the ground crew. So we've got the GPU. We check with them if they're happy for us to pressurize. Again, it makes no difference. The 787 does not pressurize at this point, but it certainly looks like it does. So we're going to do that. So we'll put on the hydraulic pumps. Fuel pumps. No fuel in the center tank because we're so light, so we don't need the center pumps. Put on the beacon. Do the recall. And we've still got doors open. That's no good. Speaking of doors, I should be closing up. There it is. What else have we got down here? The emergency lights. There you go. They should be armed. And these should be in auto. Goodness me. These would never get turned off either. These should be in auto. So yeah. The reason I spotted those is because you're actually looking for...
November 8871.
There we go. You want 4 ambers down here. So yeah. It's because I got myself muddled up in that initial flow. So what was missing there... Obviously, flight deck door power would be on. These would be left in auto position. And, yeah. That's it. So you should see, at this point, 4 ambers. Good. Now we run the trimmer. Nose down to 4.75. Hello to you, Troggy and Davo. So I'm using this as my button assigned to nose down trim. But you could also use the trim switches on the yoke here. Or alternate ones, although you'd never use the alternate ones. I'd use these. Good. And then we would run the... and the transponder can go to transponder. And we'll go to...
we actually have the cargo done, so
checklist. Flight the door closed or locked. Passenger signs are on. We've got V2151. We're in LNAV, VNAV. We're going to stop at 50. Takeoff speeds. V1. 138. VR 143, V2 151. CD pre-flight is in there, nice green box, completed. Taxi takeoff briefing. We've done the departure. For the taxi, we're going to taxi out to runway 11. We're over here, so we'll head round and then eventually out Foxtrot. There should be a parking chart on here somewhere. There must be another one. That one. So yeah, I think that's all Foxtrot actually. We shall find out. Good, and that's the before start. Checklist complete. Looking for that nice green box telling us that's done. We'll go back to the navigation display. So from the outside, the tug would now be attached. The parking brake is set, but what we're looking at is a powered on, ready to go airplane, pressurized on the APU, ready for engine start. Now I can see the Speedbirds behind us over there, so that might delay us slightly, but no matter. I'm sure they'll be taxiing soon. Vincenzo says you're flying to my hometown. Excellent. Archie says that's why you have checklists, mate. Exactly. That's exactly why they're there. So like I say, yeah, four boxes means everything's done. Oh, that's a good sign anyway. So if we can get rid of that for the engine start, and we'll call them ready. Manta 337, we are ready. Request push and start. Just zoom in on the map to get the airport map. Look at that. Brilliant.
Mexico 337, push and start approved, facing west, report for taxi.
Push and start approved, facing west, Wilco. Manta 337. Facing west, so...
7 whiskey ready for taxi.
I don't know how that's going to work. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful.
Hold position, please. You will have traffic type Bravo 789. Starting push and start.
We have... We've won. That never happens. So yeah, nearly always we'd have had to wait, but now we've been given push and start in front of the the Airbus, which means we've won because we'll taxi out ahead of them. They got no chance. Now, I did install the one in the fly-by-wire installer, the LVFR. What's it called? I can't remember. I haven't enabled it, but I suppose it might be model matching. I don't know. Anyway, that's good. Flight dispatch. I tried to get a head start. Yep, you did. You tried your best. Okay, so now the ground crew would call us, and when they're happy, see steering locked out. Again, all these messages, spot on. It's brilliant. Off we go. I'm not going to bother turning, because I don't know how to make it work. And also, I would think the tail would get perilously close to this 320. Let's set up our second camera. Ah, this is such a good livery. I think it looks absolutely great on this airplane. Well done to Paddy, as ever, for making our dreams come true. Nice. Get that speed tape in view. Clint says, why is the 350 less popular with airlines compared to the 78? Less orders. Are there less orders of the 350? They're not quite competitors. I know that it feels like they are, but the 78 came out a fair bit before the 350, but also it's smaller. It's just a smaller airplane. It's not a small airplane by any means, but it doesn't hold the same number of passengers. The 350's got a slightly wider fuselage, so it can take 10 abreast. You're not going to get that on the 78, it's 9. And the triple's also 10 abreast. So the triple and the 350 compete more than this does. So the 777X is probably the 350 1000 competitor. Maybe the 787-10 is a 350-900 competitor, you could say. I mean, the whole world now is just made up of twin-engine wide-body aircraft, as far as I can tell. And the differences between them are getting harder and harder to distinguish. But airlines seem to be able to choose specific ones. Thanks, Tech. Thanks for coming along. We are in... Let's check. TPR, we're in Rolls-Royce today. Right. I think that's probably good there. Set the brake. Now, the engine starts quite quick, so we don't usually start them until the pushback's pretty much complete. Check the ground crew, put it to start. Now, this doesn't happen. They don't turn immediately. This is left over. That's, if you want a bleed system, this is what would happen. But actually, nothing happens until we turn these on because it's electric. So, there we go. Oh, we don't have any engine views. That's a shame. 787 to fill the gap left by the 75. Yeah, it's almost like a 767 replacement, but of course the 767-400 is out. So, there's just so many twin-engine wide-body airplanes all fighting in the same space. 330 Neo, 78, 350, 777, 76-400, which I don't know if they're still making those or not, but there we go. I really hope that Sobo put the VSD in. VSD vertical situation display is a really super feature, something the 777 doesn't have and the 78 does. It's great. Flight dispatch over there, exercising his wheels as usual. Good, both engines are running. So we're going to check that the generators are all online, make sure there's no amber lights. I have seen it where a generator just doesn't come online and you get an amber light. You basically just have to reset it, but even so, it's quite important. We don't want to lose any generators on this airplane. It's ETOPS after all. But they are all on, so we turn off the APU. Anti-ice is staying in auto. Then we're going to move down, set the flaps to 5 and make sure we've set 5 and they are traveling the right way. Then we're going to go to bring up the recall, just the TCAS, which is what we wanted, and get rid of that secondary engine display. We've done the trim, and now we're going to run the flight controls. So nice and slow, slower than we do on the 320.
Estimate time to start taxi, please.
About 20 seconds, Manta 337. That's common. If air traffic control have helped you out and then you're this slow, I'm not surprised they'd start asking. Flight control checks. Look at those big spoilers. They're very big on the 78. Excellent. Right, let's do that checklist. So, anti-ice in auto. Recall is checked, just the TCAS. Flight controls are checked. Ground equipment clear. APU is off. Before taxi, checklist complete. And then you just hit ND. Remember, you can put the checklist down here if you like. I actually quite like it up on these screens. But there we go. Manta 337, request taxi.
337, taxi, holding point, runway 11, via Foxtrot and report holding point, please.
Taxi holding point 11 via Foxtrot and Wilco, Manta 337. 11, we know it's over here. The real aircraft, this would be labelled now, so you'd have actual, it would say Foxtrot on it. There we go, it's clear on the left, clear on the right.
Taxi behind traffic, type Bravo 789 that you have in front of you.
Get the head tracking on. I am looking forward to the Phoenix IEEs. Yes, indeed. So get a bit of ground speed going. Ground speed is in the HUD down here. Going to need a bit of power. There's no point starting a full lock turn with no energy in this airplane unless you really have to. You can go full lock from standstill, but you need to really rev the engines. You use it if you're doing a 180 turn on the runway.
November AA71, taxi holding point, runway 11, via Foxtrot.
Look at this, 49. Oh, are we going to get airborne in 10? I can't believe that. I was sure I'd done better this time. I thought that was pretty slick. Now, this is the default Buenos Aires. I couldn't find a payware one, really, that was ready to go. So, yeah, we're a bit stuck with this airport as the default. Differential thrust for turns, asks Patrick. Yes, indeed, absolutely. The 7.8 you can use differential thrust for turns. I do quite regularly. You don't need a lot, but because it needs thrust to get round a tight turn, it's pretty common to do that. If you're doing a 180 turn on the runway, you definitely would do it. Now, I don't know which of these is the it's meant to be a taxi line. I'm going to go with this middle solid one. So we've done the flight controls. We don't have any change to our performance page or our routing. We know we're going up to 50. We'll pretend that the cabin is now ready. So that can go to TA-RA, which gets rid of the last TCAS warning. Now let's taxi the right way for once, please, on the stream. Thank you. We've gone wrong a few times recently. I'm using the Tobii Eye Tracker 5. Oh, it's just beautiful. Well done, Paddy. And well done to Horizon. Lots of the detailing and so on. They've done such a good job. What a treat. We have fully fledged heavy airliners in Microsoft Flight Simulator already. It's great. Once you're rolling, you don't need power on the 7.8. But yeah, for those tight turns, if you enter at sort of below 5 knots ground speed, you're going to run out of steam. Do you always use the HUD? Yes. Yeah. The HUD is it'll be like turning off the PFD in the 7.8. It's fitted to all 7.8s, so you're always going to use it. big airplane for this taxiway. We are on the edge. Look at those engines. Really pushing it. Simly Bob, yes, huge difference. Long haul is a colossal lifestyle change to short haul flying. It's crazy.
337 for departure, contact Unicorn 122.8 and above flight level 240, contact South Control.
Thank you. We'll contact control at flight level 220 and we are going to Unicom now 1228. Manta 337, thanks for your help. Bye bye.
Have a good flight, bye bye.
Right, so turns like this are awkward. It's easier to do a 90-degree turn. Here, we need to get our nose, speed's too fast, get it right down. So get the nose past it so that the main gear stays around it, which you can see there. So that's working out like that. So in a weird way, that's worked, but we had to get ourselves much further over to the right there than we would. Some nice things you have are the ground speed there, and in the HUD, this accelerometer shows you up and down.
Have a good flight, bye bye, thank you. Bye.
And swap. Yeah, that little accelerometer gives you a good idea whether you're gaining energy as you travel along or losing it. Anyway, clear on the approach. Let's wind up the ND. Can't see anyone on TCAS. I think it's time to go. I think we're going to do it. Buenos Aires traffic, Manta 337, lining up runway 11 to depart with a turn to the right. So same again then. So you can see here, this chevron goes above our airplane symbol. Boeing called it an airplane. I never would have done, but Boeing made it, so I have to go with that. Yeah, it goes above, so we're still accelerating. If it goes level, you're sticking with the speed, and you'll see if I go tight on the turn, it goes down. So we're decelerating as I turn the aircraft that tightly. So what's going to happen is obviously we're going to grind to a halt. So it's a really useful tool when taxiing. A lot of pilots don't taxi with the HUD, but I actually think it's quite good. The downside is it can obviously clutter up your vision a little bit. I think it's handy because you've got the ground speed down here, you've got the accelerometer. It's quite useful, and it means you can keep your head outside. Anyway, let's use the full runway. We don't need it, but we're long haul now, so.
Traffic, Speedbird 7 Whiskey, lining up runway 11 after departing Boeing 787.
Right, slowing down. What's our ground speed? 8 knots. That's about as fast as I want to be, and now it's not the 10. It's not too long, so. Once that centre line's in line with this corner of the window, I'm going to swing the nose round. You see that decelerating, it's going to grind to a halt. I think we're in a good place. There we go. And we've got to run the before takeoff checklists. Before takeoff checklist, flaps. This is a very short checklist. So that is checklist complete. Back to the ND. That was what that caution would be. Right, how are we looking? We're pointing a little bit left, but the main wheels are roughly in the right place. That's more than good enough. Time to go. Right, everyone ready? We're going to set 20 on the TPR. We don't need to hold the brakes on this airplane. Push toga. A little bit of forward pressure. Thrust ref, toga toga. We're going to use so little power. Look at that. 60 TPR, about 80% N1, just over. So there is the thrust set. There's 80 knots. Hold. So now we can control the power ourselves. The auto thrust system is not in yet. It's just let go of them. It's a very strange system, that. So if you wanted more power now, you could just firewall the throttles, but there are reasons not to do that. There's V1 and there's the rotate. Now the horizon is a little bit keen to get off the ground. You have to be quite sensitive on the rotation. The real airplane's a bit heavier, I think. Airplane up to that token reference line. LNAV, positive rate, gear up. Thrust ref, LNAV, VNAV speed. So about 400 feet, all those FMAs change over. And you can see there, it wants us to go right. So I can move, I'm using that flight path vector over to this dot. It's climbing at a sharper angle than I'm used to. I've never reached 20 degrees pitch. I think it's a little bit too keen, like I say, in this initial part of the takeoff. Anyway, we're through acceleration now. So you can see the target speed's moved up. Now we have to trim. You have to keep trimming at this stage in the 7.8. It seems, I think it's a bit pointless, really. It's just there for the sake of it, almost. But above the 5, we can go to flaps 1. Flaps 1. And above the 1, we'll go to flaps up. Yeah, it's complaining about the checklist again. That seems to be a bit of a bug. It gives that warning too often. We've done the checklists, but there we go. Following that guidance cue. And let's put in the autopilot. Oh, yeah, very, very pitch sensitive. We're going up to a flight level, so let's set standards. That is a very low flight level. There we go. So thrust ref, LNAV, VNAV speed, autopilot in, 250 knots, on standard. Flaps are up. And there's speed mode. So a lot happened there. I do have a tutorial on the channel. If you look at my channel, there's a recent, well, I say recent, one of my more recent videos is a 787 takeoff tutorial. I talk in depth about these things, about the mode changes, about the way the performance is calculated, about this calculator over here. It's also a short takeoff brief in my full beginner's guide to the 787 into getting it into the air, but there we go. So now we're in speed, LNAV, VNAV, alt. It's not on VNAV path. It doesn't want to be here. It's just been restricted here because I put 5,000 feet in the window. I'm going to get rid of that master caution. I'm going to press cancel because I'm not interested in that for now. I think that's the after takeoff one, trying to come too early. The gear is up, the flaps are at 0, and the auto brake is off. And if you have enjoyed and you are leaving at this point, please do leave a like on your way out. It makes a massive difference to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. But there we go. So now it's just flying happily on the LNAV path, but it's below profile. If we had the VSD, we'd be able to see it complaining about that. I can look on the legs page and it will show us any restrictions. There are no more restrictions that it's planning to fly, so it just wants to climb straight up. So what I can do is, well, we're going to 400. I'm just going to check the VNAV page and check on the next page what our maximum is. Maximum 428, because we're so light, we can go straight up to 400. Let's set 400, and then I'm just going to push it. And now it's going to go VNAV speed, and it's effectively just going to climb up as if it's in a managed climb in the Airbus. This is like pushing in the managed climb bug. Thrust ref, so it's going to climb thrust rating, LNAV and VNAV speed, and up we go on standards. Let's run that after takeoff checklist. So yeah, it's just reset itself, which is not correct. So we go to normal menu, after takeoff, landing gears up, flaps are up, after takeoff checks complete. Now the performance is just a bit much. And also we're at climb. Actually, to be fair, if I go to init ref, we should probably be at climb 2, which will derate those engines a bit for the climb. There we go. That'll make it a little more reasonable. And of course, the dreaded heading bug. Always in the wrong place. That's its job. The landing behavior of the 7810, the default one, is very, very good. I've been using that a little bit today, and I'm impressed with it. I haven't had much experience of this latest landing version. I think it still crunches the nose wheel a little bit, but we shall see. We shall see. I think the default 10 is very good for landing. There's 10,000 feet. Oh, we didn't do the landing lights. There we go. We missed the lights in our flow. We were getting too excited, too chatty. So they would now be off. Taxi light can go off. Turn offs off. We've got the strobe lights on. Beacon and nav lights on. That's all we need. It's going to accelerate. It climbs very fast, this airplane. And weight-wise, 28% trim. So what we can do is put in that trim. So you'd load that in once you know what it's going to be for the flight, really. So if you have a load sheet on the turnaround, then you would just enter that there if you know that that's what it will be. But if you get a final load sheet after takeoff, like the Phoenix Sim does, then you'd enter that in whenever you got that. Good stuff. Still pretty impressive climb rate, but we are very light, to be fair. You'd never really climb at 170 tons in the 7.8 unless you're doing a short haul route. Evening, Lorenzo. Good day to you in Saudi Arabia. Thanks for joining us. That's why you have. Never mind. I have not seen the Horizon CPDLC in the Works channel. Interesting. Yeah, very good. Beautiful part of the world. Quite flat. Buenos Aires is not very mountainous, and Santiago, obviously, with the Andes, is incredibly mountainous. Quite a difference. Look at that. 1 minute past. It's been an hour and 1 minute since I started streaming. And we are well and truly underway. Steaming along. This is a high climb rate. I think it's a bit too high. But, again, we're so light. Longest flights in the 787. I've done flights over 15 hours now. Yeah. Which is an incredible amount of time to be on an airplane. Really incredible. That poor wing. Indeed, list of it. Indeed. This flight ends up being a gorgeous climb into mountains. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It is headwind, of course. Always. I always plan my flights with the headwinds by design. So that actually would be affecting our performance. We did load in the winds, didn't we? Winds. Request. Now, you would do this before you set off in the real airplane. I keep forgetting this airplane has it modelled. And the reason you do that is because... Load. There they are. Amazing. I can't believe this works this well. I'm really blown away. And load. And there you go. You do need to execute this page in the real aircraft. It doesn't seem to need it here. And then you go back to F. It's quite clunky. You have to. So you go to wind, request. Then you have to go to wind, load. Then you have to wait. Then it will go green and you execute it. Then you go descent, load. Well, you don't need to execute it, and climb, load. You don't need to execute it. Don't ask me why it's quite like that. But yeah, quite convoluted, I think. But there we go. So VNAV speed, it will go into VNAV path when it levels off. I have flown to Brussels International Airport in my career at some point. Yes. Style says, this plane seems so much more complicated to fly than it needs to be. I don't know about that. It's actually really simple. There's the Boeing-isms, like this whole pressurizing and stuff, that the Airbus, you just leave the hydraulic pumps on because they don't run when the engines are off, and then that's it. You know, why don't we do that? But part of it comes from this being a highly, highly redundant airplane. And by that, I mean, if things fail, it doesn't really affect the airplane's performance or capabilities. So... it's perhaps to do with that. However, I'm sure the 350 and 380 don't have to do that. Other things like, you know, why is the logo light a separate button? Why when we have so many amazing systems on this airplane, why do I need to turn the logo light on and off? Why doesn't it just do it? You know, that's one. The vertical modes are left over. These are pretty much the same across all Boeings. So 73, 75, 76, 74 all had this sort of same idea, and I think it's not as clean and easy to use as the Airbus one, but I am of course more used to the Airbus one, so I would say that. Boeing pilots who go to the Airbus will likewise feel the opposite, but I just think there's a lot of extra buttons up here. Selecting climb to, all of this stuff, although I suppose that's because the 320 doesn't have a climb to. Does the wind data update itself in flight? Yeah, the wind data can, if you've got it set up that way. It depends on the airline. And that's it, list of in exactly. This airplane shares so much, or shares a type rating with the 777, so we have to treat it like that, basically. That's why we do these pumps and so on. Because if you look, this overhead panel, aside from being grey and not brown, it's all the same. There's just no bleed switches. But this fuel panel, the hydraulic panel, the electrical, they all look pretty much identical. Minor differences. No HUD, of course, for the 777. It's pretty much straight line, this route. Quite nice. So we are on live time. We've got the winds loaded. If I go to progress, we'll see the landing time. Well, that's disappointing. I thought it was on live time. No. Oh, it could be dark. I might have to make it not live time. There we go, 1936. I was so proud of myself, banging on about how it was live time. G90 asks, how many hours are you on duty on the 15-hour flight? So if you're on an airplane 15 hours, what are the pilots doing? It really depends on your airline, how it works out. If you've got 4 pilots, you're on duty. If you've got 4 pilots, it depends if you're the operating crew or you're one of the spare pilots, as it were. If you're the operating crew, you'll be on duty for just over half that time. If you're not operating, you'll be on duty for just under half of that time. So on a 12-hour flight, a 13-hour flight, let's say, yeah, it'd be about the operating pilots will do a bit more because they'll of course done the climb out and so on, and they'll be doing the descent as well. Epaulet says, what's your favourite between 777, 78 and 320? I absolutely love the 320. I think everyone knows that. But I do like the 787 a lot. It's growing on me. It's incredibly comfortable in the sense of the air and the way it rides turbulence, which are 2 key features. They do make a difference. It's designed to be. It's a long-haul airplane, you know. So I like it. I like landing the 787. I'd say it's probably my favourite aeroplane for landing. Not to say I'm good at it. I'm just saying I enjoy the experience. And the reason is the 787 has so many fancy systems to make the landings handle the same. And then it's got such a high approach speed. It comes in with a very low nose attitude. It's a very unique feeling. It's a very different feeling. I originally started on relatively light Dash 8 aircraft, which were they could get blown around a lot on final approach. Final approach is very slow, and yeah, it would take a while to get to the runway. Then I moved on to the A320, and it's faster, and things would unravel a bit quicker in the final few hundred feet. And finally, on this airplane, my goodness, it's just a freight train coming in towards the runway. You can't see it from the outside, really, but if you compare it to a 350, you'll see the nose is low, and as a result, it responds very quickly to the yoke inputs. It's very alive in the flare, which is nice. It's a nice feeling when you know you have control over the airplane in the flare, and it's not gonna get pushed around too much by the wind. It's got weight, it's got speed, it's got energy. One 347. I'll just put it in the right. In the real airplane, I'll just put it in the left. There we go. It doesn't accept that. 1347. Control Manta 337, climbing flight level 400 to Urino. Squawk 2620, Manta 337. 2620. He's very quiet. I hope I don't miss another call. I think I can just turn this up. No, that's full volume. Around the time we go. I'm maintaining flight level 400, Manta 337. I can't hear what they said there. I'm not going to fiddle with the volumes because it worked so far. Sorry, could you say again for Manta 337? You're coming through very, very quiet. Okay, thank you. That's a bit better. I'll turn up mine as well. Great, thank you very much, Manta 337. I think that's enough. Good enough. Right. I am excited for the 777X. Yeah, I'd be curious to see that. What's smarter, 320 or 78? The impressive things on the 78, the 78 smarter. Although its autopilot interaction modes are, let's turn the seatbelt signs off, are I think a little bit clunky in some areas for me, and I prefer the Airbus ones. The airplane itself it's incredible. you would be amazed at what systems you can fail on a 787 and it still just handles and flies like a normal airplane. I really, really like it. It's incredibly carefully designed. You can see that Boeing know how to make long-haul airplanes because this airplane has been done that way. And I know Airbus does as well. I haven't flown a long-haul Airbus, so I'm sure I probably have similar feelings. But yeah, it's fantastic. Ah, no, everyone's quiet. So it must be me. Could be a distance thing.
Just confirm that 2656, you're coming up very quiet.
Okay, no. Why is that? Thank you so much for a £2 super chat. Really appreciate it. What's your opinion on the Japan airline incidents? So thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support, White Hat. Yeah, this came up last time, and like I always say, there's a temptation. We don't know everything that's happened. More has come out since we last streamed. If you want my opinion, my opinion is I just don't know what happens. All I do know is there's not going to be one thing. It's not like... Oh dear, poor controller. It's not like there's going to be one thing that happened. It's not like the pilot taxied on the runway when they shouldn't. It's not that simple. Why wasn't the stop bar lit when it was NOTAMed? Okay, well, why was that? And how long had that been like that? Why didn't the runway alerting system catch it? An incident like that is simply, in modern aviation, is not acceptable for it to happen, full stop, but it's not acceptable for it to happen because of one mistake. The whole system is designed to avoid that. So clearly, there's been several major errors or procedural issues that have allowed that to happen that should not have allowed it to happen. I'm sure we'll learn some amazing things, and it's awful that 5 people lost their lives in that Dash 8, and it's terrible, of course. It's also amazing what the crew on that Japan Airlines aircraft achieved to get everyone off like that safely. So, yeah, it's going to be a learning point for the industry. There's going to be some changes, I suspect, in the way runways are occupied and controllers are worked and all sorts. I don't fully understand the systems behind lining up aircraft on the runway. I don't know what air traffic controllers are obliged to monitor and what they're not. I know what I'm obliged to monitor. And that brings me on to my next point, which is that aircraft was landing on a runway at night with an airplane on it. Well, why didn't the pilots see the airplane on it? There's speed VNAV path. We're now in the correct path for a Boeing. I don't like this whole path system, but there it is. Yeah, so why did they not go around? Was a common question on, everyone wanted to know at the time. Look at that speed, 8.7, excellent. Well, that's simple. There's no way they could see it. There's no way. It's so hard to see an airplane on a runway at night in front of you. Airports aren't lit up. They're not floodlit. All you can see is the runway lights, and you can only see those when you're aligned with the runway. If you're landing on a runway at night, okay, we've got a HUD here, which is a whole other topic, but even if you're like this, runway at night, until you're in the flare, let's say, the only way you're going to see an airplane on the runway in front of you is if it's blocking out the runway lights. So you'd have to be looking at the runway, you'd have to see it blocking out the runway lights, and you'd have to notice where it's done that. And there's a few reasons the Dash 8 isn't very good at that. If it was a 380, then sure, you'd notice there's something on the runway. But the Dash 8 is very small. The only light on the back of a normal Dash 8 is one tiny bulb on the top of the tail, and it's one white bulb, a nav light. What colour are the runway centerline lights? They're white. If you have the tail of the Dash 8, it's raised up. So even if you were to say, well, the fuselage is blocking out some runway lights, the tail is actually lifted up in that place. So there'll be a little white light there. And if that, I wouldn't even be surprised if that's less powerful than the runway lights and you wouldn't see it. Dash 8s are also very thin, so the fuselage would have to be perfectly aligned with the runway, and you'd have to be perfectly aligned with that fuselage for it to even block out the runway lights. So I think there's a high chance it wouldn't. It's very thin airplane. I have spent the first few years of my career taxiing around behind Dash 8 aircraft, and I can tell you they are so hard to see at night. I thought it at the time. This was years ago, but you wouldn't spot them. They are so slim, and there's just that one light. 787, different matter. You know, we've got loads of lights on the back of a 78. You've got wing lights, nav light, bright LEDs, and then these fantastic pulsing beacons, which are so bright. So a 78 on the runway, you would see it'll be blocking out some lights. It's got loads of lights in it. But yeah, a little Dash 8, it doesn't surprise me that the pilots they say they didn't see it, and I totally believe them. And that's true of lots of airplanes, by the way. I'm not suggesting it's only the Dash 8's fault or there's an inherent problem with the Dash 8. I'm saying that aircraft are not easy to see from behind at night. They're not really designed to be. An airplane flying away from you isn't really a problem. So, yeah, that side of it, that's my opinion on that side of it. And I'm not talking about what happened, why that aircraft was on the runway, or why they crossed the stop bar, or why the airplane was could land, and all that stuff. But I am saying it doesn't surprise me that you could land and not see an airplane on the runway. It relies on other systems to spot that sort of thing. We do look, but, you know. And remember, there's lots of times we land where we can't see the runway until about 200 feet. And obviously, if you do see something, you would go around. But again, the idea that you'd see a Dash 8 that's been sat on the runway still for 40 seconds, I don't know, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, good point. Clint says, were the lights on the small light aircraft not flashing? That's something we don't know. The strobe lights on the Dash 8 are relatively decent, but there's one on top of the tail. So should they have seen that? You'd hope so. That strobe is really the thing that you're hoping to catch this problem. If you're crossing a runway, you put the strobe lights on. And you'll see that we didn't actually do it on this departure. Part of the problem of streaming and being one pilot. But yeah, so yes, if it had a working anti-collision beacon on the top of the tail, it should have been spotted. But again, is it bright enough to tell? Very hard to say, especially on a busy approach in a busy airport with lots of lights. Especially, let's say you had a HUD down. You know, you got green in your face. If this auto brightness went too bright at that moment, there's a million combinations of things that could have happened. A million. Flight Dispatch 320, thanks so much for your $12.73 tip. Really appreciate it. Flight Dispatch says, great having the streams back after a long busy summer. Glad to hear the 787 is treating you well. One of my favourite to dispatch. That's great to hear. Yeah, it's quite a good size, isn't it, the 78? It's got not too many passengers. So it's got lots of big doors. It's a wide body, but it actually holds, in many cases, as many passengers as a 320. So it's quite quick to board and deboard. And yeah, it's a nice airplane. Thank you so much, Flight Dispatch. Really appreciate the tip. Thanks for flying along with us today. Thanks for supporting the channel. Really, really kind. Wise Hat, thank you so much for the £10 super chat. Wise Hat says, have you seen Estonia Flight 9001? It's an accident where all flight control computers failed on an A320, forcing the pilots to only use the trim and rudder. Both engines were failing. No deaths. I have not seen that. Estonia Flight 9001. And I want to be clear, I was talking there about how it's not surprising they didn't see an airplane on the runway. I think perhaps I don't want to worry you. What I mean by that is, if everything else fails, you should still see the airplane on the runway. But what I'm saying is that it doesn't surprise me that has happened. They're just not as obvious as you would imagine. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's not like you're on approach and there's a blindingly obvious airplane on the runway and they would, it would be negligent if you didn't see it. And what I'm saying is, I think it's very possible not to see it because of the combination of lights and lack of lights. And like we say, we don't even know if that airplane had all its lights on, for example, at the moment it entered the runway, and so on. So there's lots and lots of aspects to it. Here we go. So this incident, it was 12 years ago, 2012. Oh, I can't. There's not much out there. There's no Wikipedia article for it. As a training flight. Is that it? Oh, I have to look up that incident. I haven't seen it myself, but interesting. Yep, you can fly the Airbus without any of the computers. It's totally possible. You can fly the 787 without the computers. They have direct systems to allow them to fly the controls. I know they're fly-by-wire, but the computers interfere with that. But you can set it to sort of have it where they don't. So, yeah. Yep. I wouldn't like to fly an Airbus without any of the computers, but I can... yeah, it is very possible. So thank you very much for that. I will look up that flight. And thanks so much for your super chat. Really appreciate it. And thank you again to Flight Dispatch. Very, very kind. Car Edit says, can you explain how to do a direct to on a 787? That's a great point. Let's say you get... Well, okay, it's simple. It just doesn't have a direct to page like we do on the Airbus. You go to legs, and then you get your point. So it's a straight line. So let's say we cleared direct to arm up. You select it, and then you must be on page 1, and you put it in the top left, so this magenta box. Put it in there. It goes into modification. So it's not done yet. It's just thinking about it. You check. It all looks sensible, and then you press execute. Once you've done that, you need to then press LNAV. If you were in heading before, that wouldn't work. It would stay in heading. So you've got to do that, all as it is, and then press LNAV. Lateral navigation. So just make sure. The Airbus would automatically drop into LNAV. Or NAV, I suppose it was called on the Airbus, wasn't it? I think. Goodness me. Flight Dispatch says, Streamlabs still converting to dollars, poor exchange rate. Yes, yeah, indeed. Patrick Hampson's asked about the merch. The merch is... I like it. I've got some of it. I think it's good quality. I don't know where it's made, but also it's relatively old now. I need to revamp the merchandise. That's on my list of things to do. And Lorenzo's asked for opinions on the Alaska Air incident. Well, like I say, I don't think anyone... There's not many people who understand those doors and how they're made and how they're designed. It's incredibly surprising that happened. It really is. Although it sounds like they're starting to unravel what may have gone on. But yeah, again, great job by the crew. Thank goodness no one was in that seat. And what a bizarre incident. Yeah. Fatboy says, did you see they're stopping saying first for departure, etc., in case that gets mistaken for a clearance? So there's lots of things about taxi and takeoff clearances that are very specific. And Japan is very good with its phraseology. Some places don't use very strict phrases, but Japan, I believe, is quite good. But yeah, basically, you're not allowed to say ready for takeoff on the tower frequency. So let's say you're approaching the runway, you're told to contact the tower. You contact the tower and you say ready for departure, because you'll never be cleared for departure. You're cleared for takeoff, right? So by making sure you only say cleared for departure, by saying I'm ready for departure, it can't get confused or misheard by another aeroplane on the frequency or by you as a takeoff clearance. And then tower would just say roger. Because of course, if you say ready for takeoff, then someone else might hear cleared for takeoff, and then they might read it back, okay, taking off, and off they go, So, yeah. It makes sense. I hope the flight data recorders will be made public as part of the investigation. That's usually what happens. I don't know if there's going to be much information on them that they need, frankly, but yeah. Cody says, I was a bit surprised on how quickly the carbon fibre fuselage on the JAL A350 accident burned so quickly post-accident. Well, I think it's a bit misleading because we, of course, that was actually live. You could see that aircraft burning live. It was 7 minutes from the impact before everyone got off the airplane. And if you see the footage of people getting off the airplane after 7 minutes, they are wandering around the outside and the airplane's still completely intact. They've only managed to use the front 2 exits, I believe, in the end. And one of the engines was still running. Now, why that is, I don't know. You wouldn't evacuate an airplane with an engine running normally. But the state of the airplane and the state of that engine, it wouldn't surprise me if it had lost control. But we don't know. We do not know. That's me speculating. I shouldn't do that. So, regardless, the plane was in a bit of a state. 7 minutes after the incident, and the fire had been going for a lot of that. You could see it in the video outside the wing. People got off and the plane was still in one piece. So it did eventually take hold, that fire, but that airplane would have had several tons of fuel on it. I don't know how much. It may have just had a normal amount of arrival fuel, but there is every chance it had a full, it could have done tankering fuel. It might have enough fuel to carry on for its next flight. Who knows? Again, my point stands. There's so much information that only the investigators and the pilots on the day will know. But yeah, I think it did very well. I think that it took it a long time. It did eventually make a very spectacular image, and I think that's stuck in people's minds. But there have been incidents where planes have just burnt to the ground in no time, and you don't even get the chance to see them. And it has happened on metal airplanes as well. I think it made a spectacular image, especially when you had the flames coming out of the windows. I mean, that was amazing, wasn't it? Also, you had that bit where the tail section of the fuselage dropped to the floor, which was remarkable as well to see that. But yeah, I think it did well. 7 minutes of fire and everyone got off. It was still in one piece. I think that's more than enough after an incident like that. I mean, that's a catastrophic incident, no doubt about it. So Chanel says, I'd imagine the engine wasn't responding to shutdown command. Yeah, this is it. Anything's possible. G90 says, I was surprised the taxi clearance was taxi to holding point Charlie 5. No specific instructions to hold short of the runway. Yeah. I haven't looked into that. I haven't read the transcripts. When metal get hot enough, it burns as well. Exactly. It does indeed. Have you experienced any emergencies in flight? I've had different things. Common things lots of pilots will experience will be medical issues on board. So somebody who needs medical attention, that's quite common, potentially with the diversion. I've had a few technical issues over my career, but relatively minor. Nothing that's caused me to declare an emergency. Touch wood. Ace says, I was surprised the CVR only had to retain 2 hours of data rather than 25 hours. In these days of high hard disk capacity, surely the requirement should be reviewed regularly. Yes, it's an interesting point. I don't personally want them to record 25 hours of data because that's it's a bit of a privacy thing, right? The idea that the airplane could have left your hands a day ago, and yet now it's getting investigated for another incident that's nothing to do with you, and your recordings are all on there. I think that's why it's left at 2 hours. But I also think it doesn't really tell them much. 25 hours of recordings would, typically not tell them much. Veer says, Haneda can be distracting with the super bright airport and surrounding. Sometimes if you're in flap 3, you get a sinking feeling even though you're on profile. Yeah, confusing visual image, certainly. It's because it's out in the water, so it's the black hole effect. Yeah. Lauren V, there we go. Lauren V says, right engine did not shut down, in fact. There you go. Yeah, which is, it's incredible to see it running glowing orange. I mean, amazing piece of engineering. I couldn't believe that footage of that engine running while sparks coming out the back of it and glowing. I mean, incredible. And add cameras surely these days. Again, I don't want that. I mean, whatever's safest is what I want, but I don't think adding cameras and recording your voice for 25 hours is going to solve these incidents. There's no question marks at the moment about that because, of course, the voice recorders the crucial voice recorder is going to be the one from the Dash 8, isn't it? And that one won't have been overwritten. And nor will the 350 one. So I think there's just I really don't know what you would achieve. I don't know what if there's an investigation where having a camera would have solved something, then I imagine they would do it. But I just don't think it's happened. I have not, so far, touch wood, had a full rejected takeoff. They're very rare, rejected takeoffs. They're possible. The most common ones will be a low-speed rejected takeoff, where you have something that causes you to need to stop, like a windshield warning, something like that, or air traffic control change their mind. Lauren V's pretty much spot on. Says the issue seems to be maintenance not pulling it after incident. Nothing they need of, but they're upset they don't have the flight data recorder. So yeah, there's a you're meant to. The problem with the flight data recorder is if the airplane isn't immediately shut down, there are certain circumstances where it will. Sorry, if the airplane isn't immediately shut down, there are circumstances where the data recorder will just keep running, and that leads to loss of data. So I can understand the frustration. And this is where the whole 25 hours argument or having some longer recording makes more sense, because of course, okay, so the pilots aren't going to be thinking about pulling the CVR, the voice recorder, in the middle of that incident, and they shouldn't be. They should be focusing on what they're doing, and they did. We're talking about the Alaska incident here. So they're going to focus on flying the airplane, and there's absolutely no way they should be fiddling around putting circuit breakers for the voice recorder, especially in a damaged airplane. So really, it gets overridden, I think, quite easily, and I think this is an industry thing. So perhaps if they were longer, or maybe if it was automatic, I mean, you're only really going to want to pull the circuit breaker after landing, because of course, what if something happens? What if you have an incident and then you're 3 hours from landing? You know, an ETOPS aircraft like the 787, we could easily be 3 hours from an airport. So we have an incident, and then we pull the circuit breaker. Well, what if something happens on the way, on the diversion, you know? So, frankly, it's not something, you know, I follow the procedures, and that's my job. Salakin says, how far is the HUD from your head in real life? It's close. That is probably a realistic seat position. So, yeah, your head would be somewhere here. Pretty close. The HUD has a breakaway function. If you were to have a rejected takeoff or an incident where your head might be thrown forward, the HUD actually automatically breaks away forwards, and it gets out the way of your head. There's no airbags, remember, on an airplane. So it does have that feature because it is relatively close to your face. Yeah, good question. Yeah, G90 indeed. Yeah, it's brilliant work on the 350 and the crew to get everyone off, and for the captain to make sure the last passengers get off as well. Yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah, exactly. First thing for the passengers and crew after landing is getting sorted out by paramedics. Exactly. It's you just got to look after everyone. The investigation is coming later, but more important that everyone's safe at the time. Styled has a good question, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Victor, thanks so much, Victor, for the 50 Polish Lottie super chat. Really, really appreciate it. Victor says, nice Manta livery. Is Manta Sun available too? One of the best things planes can do is take people from cold and gloomy European countries to somewhere with a nice beach and sun. Thanks so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it, Victor. Thanks for supporting the channel. Yes, Manta Sun is available. If you go to the Discord, you can get the Manta Sun livery. It's in X-Plane. It's an excellent livery. I really like it. But yeah, that's in X-Plane. We don't have Manta Sun on the 787. Could be not a bad idea. We could do some summer charters in the 7.8. Look at that, though. Love the grime. Super stuff. Now, we are probably steaming ahead of flight dispatch because we're doing decimal 8.6. So we are significantly faster. A320, we're doing 7.8. So thank you again, Victor. Really appreciate the super chat. Very kind. And yeah, on the Discord, Manta Sun. But no, there's no Manta Sun in Microsoft just yet. Right, question here about the flight deck having cameras. Stardark says, I'm surprised there aren't cameras for the pilots in critical places such as near engines so they can quickly identify issues. Really good point. I'm about to go on a not rant. So let's think. It's a great question. Why don't we have cameras to look at stuff? The reason is visually identifying things is actually quite a bad way of doing it. And to sum that up, if you see those videos of airplanes landing and then in windy conditions usually, and then you see all the comments, or even the person filming sometimes making comments about it or the abilities of the pilots, and I disagree with that on the basis that you cannot tell if a landing was good by looking at it. Likewise, it's very hard to look at an engine and decide which one's the problem. For classic example, the 777-300 does have cameras. It has a camera that they can bring up on this lower screen, and that points at the left and right engines. It's there for taxiing on the ground mainly. If you were to look at that, and let's say we're in the cruise and you get a warning of an engine problem. By the way, check this out. The engine anti-ice has come on and the wing anti-ice because we're in this humidity. It's amazing. Very good. Yeah, so they can bring up this camera. But if they were to bring up the camera now, what do you think they're going to see? Well, we can do it. The camera would sit behind them. It doesn't quite work here. In the real airplane, you would see the contrails. They fade into view a little bit behind the airplane, but you can see here, right behind the wing. So which engine's got problems, left or right? You know, it's not as obvious as looking at it. So the 777-300, you are not supposed to use those cameras for identifying things like a failed engine. They're actually only there for reference and for taxiing. What you're going to do is use the engine instruments and the cautions and warnings the airplane has given you. Those are incredibly carefully designed. They're made very specifically to be exactly the right warning for what you have. So yeah, so that's why we don't have cameras. Flight dispatch took a shortcut. Well done. Yeah, it's a serious headwind, isn't it? 100 knots. Arrival time under an hour, 50 minutes to go. We basically need to start briefing and getting our arrival in. Paddy. Benji asks, how comfortable are those seats from the back support, especially during long flights? These are good seats. Then the Airbus seats are fantastic. The back support is very good. You have a lumbar support that you can push in and out, which you can see here, in and out. There you go, lumbar in and out. You can then slide this whole panel up and down. It's on tracks, so it can be slid up. So I would have it higher than that typically. You can then push this in and you can rotate this headrest. Then the back obviously tilts. The armrests fold out. Two on each side, and the top of the armrest is squidgy, which the Airbus is not, which is something I always disliked about the Airbus armrests. These are squidgy, which is fantastic. you tilt this back, and then the best feature of these seats, something that I've never seen before, and I don't think even the triple seats do this, is that they can tilt the base. So this base can tilt, so the front comes up. So that is really comfortable. It takes the pressure off certain points on your body when you can adjust the tilt as well. Really like it. It's just a shame about the feet. Your feet are down here in the footwells by the pedals, and that's it. A lot of pilots will actually rest them on these this bar here. It's got a bit of a lip to it, so it keeps you off the instruments, and that's just a way to just stretch your legs in a different angle. You know, when you're doing 15 hours, you need to. Lorenzo says, I need to go to bed. Early morning tomorrow. Thanks for coming along. Have a good night's sleep. HG says, I hope you get the chance to fly to Santiago in real life in future. The scenery and terrain is absolutely stunning. I bet it is. Well, I'm hoping to see it today. Again, very flat on this side. In fact, I have a horrible feeling. No, data's on.
Good evening, sir. 1055,
Is this really what it's like? Not what I expected.
2602.
Evening, Yaroslav. Good to see you.
2602 for Foxtrot Alpha Golf 1055.
Stardark says, talking about cameras here, says, I just remember watching a video where the engine came off during takeoff and the captain wasn't aware until they touched down, got out of his seat and looked out the window. Wow, that's amazing. I can't imagine how that happens. Yeah, these days the systems will tell you very clearly what's going on. I say that relatively clearly. Certainly clearer than a camera could tell you. Ah, Flight Dispatch thought the same. There we go. Dad of Two says, happy to call the live stream. Thanks for all the great explanations. You're very welcome, Dad of Two. Very welcome, Dad. Oh dear. What route did you take to become a pilot, and what would you recommend? I won't say what I did, but I would recommend, if you can get on an airline cadet scheme and they've lined up a job for you, I'd recommend that. Otherwise, you can pay for it yourself and then become a pilot, and you can do that in a quick way or a short way. But the best way, or the most ideal way, is anything that gives you that job lined up at the end, as long as it's relatively secure. Obviously not so good if the airline might fail, and they all might fail, so you have to be a little bit careful with that. Yaroslav, I really like the Horizon 7.8. I think it's beautiful. I just think it's a little bit pitch sensitive on takeoff. We'll see about the landing, but otherwise I think it's absolutely lovely. Flies nicely, taxis really nicely. Yeah, very nice. It's really flat all the way to the Andes, yeah. So let's have a look at our routes. Should have terrain on really. How do I see the en route stuff? There it is. So yeah, the Andes, it's only the last bit we're going to see it, right, Cal. So let's load up that arrival. We can do that now. That was weird. Why did it do that? The whole thing just flashed. Oh well. Departure arrival. I did look earlier, they were on Southerly. Now this should automatically take us to, it would take you to the arrivals page, but there we go. Arrivals. Do we have a controller there? We do not. Oh. Sorry, controller was asking what our call sign was. I feel bad. I didn't see that message. It's funny, it didn't make a noise. Robert says the 100 Heavens killing me in the CJ4. I bet it is. Oh, we can do satellite imagery. I haven't updated this for a while, to be fair, so probably mine can't. Paddy, good to see you. Thank you so much for this delivery, Paddy. It's really, really super. We've been enjoying it very much. Flight dispatch going for 17 left. Yeah, I think 17 left will be the normal arrival. Cal arrival 240 in, probably to Pumar. That's the wrong airport. I think it was Zulu. No, thank you, Paddy. And yeah, you've done a fantastic job with it. I mean, we've all been enjoying it. I think it looks great on this airplane, actually, and I'm sure that's down to your tweaks. And we love the speed tape and the grime, just great. But I really like it. I'm really proud of this livery on this airplane. I think they work together really nicely. Look at that. I'd fly on that.
Good evening, 2605 Pushback.
Right, there's no Zulu. I'm going to go with Yankee. We're not living Cat 2. Weather's nice. Pin that. And that is in via Puma to Takeoff. So, arrival. ILS. Oh, there is a Zulu. I think it'd be the Yankee. The Zulu's a low vis. So let's do ILS Yankee 17 left. Puma.
South America Control. Can you repeat
Ah.
the squawk number again?
Why is it not giving us the arrival? Let's put that in ourselves then. Cat. Oh no, that's annoying. It's not got the rest of it in there. We might have to do some typing ourselves because it's not going to give us the ILS. Unless I try that. And now I go to arrivals. ILS Yankee 17 left. Puma. Execute. Let's just see if that's done what I want. Nope. My goodness. Right. We're going to have to type some stuff in. Lausanne. Which is going to be not in the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. So there we go. First time I had to do that. Then Ekalima 449. That's never going to work. Yes, it is. Yeah, 9 miles away. You can see my confidence when using these things. Safel. Good. Ugola. Now, you wouldn't normally have to do this. You can fiddle with the approach up until the start of the actual approach. So this is allowed, but it would have been loaded in the database. Z is the most common suffix on the ILS's X group. That's why I would typically choose that one. But in this case, I think it's Y because these are the low vis. EL220 and then Puma. So now I take Puma, put it there. Go to plan. Look at that. Around the corner. Execute. This is great. This LNAV is super, super stuff. Working title have done an incredible job. Right, let's put in some restrictions. Cal. Oh, no. This is harder to do. Excellent. Above 240. Lausanne. Now, I imagine we'll have a very high transition altitude. Now, that shouldn't work, I don't think. But it has. It's got a high transition. Let's see. Where is the transition level? It's by ATC. It's going to be high. Actually, it looks like about 10,000 feet. So let me put that in. I mean, it's clearly got 18,000 somewhere. Okay, we'll solve that later. Anyway, 18,000. Now let's see if I can do both. Above 170. Below. No, above 140. Below 170. This is getting pretty advanced. Not sure it's going to take that. No. No, I knew that would happen. You don't ever have to type these in, you see. It's actually going to make that restriction already. It's planning on 16,000 feet. So I'm going to get rid of that. Not going to worry about that one. And I am going to worry about this one. At SAFL, max 250. This says 270. So we'll do 250 speed / A 110 just to help out with that arrival. Execute. There we go. Good. Silicon says 140A 170B. Let's try that. Oh no, without the slash. I don't think the slash needs to be in there because the slash is how it designates the speed. Yeah. Let's try that slash. Now you can of course look this up. It's if you were going to start typing it in like this, you would do basically because it's not normal ops really. I'm not too worried. Like I say, it's clearly going to meet that restriction. Or it's now got. It's getting on the low side, so I'm going to put above 140, and then I'm confident it will meet that. Below 17, we'll just make sure it does. Then we got 250 at 110, a Gola above 8,000. You can see here the way they've written that 5,000A. We won't get too bogged down. That's not worked. Erase. Well, it's going to be 10,000 feet there. I'm not too worried really. I think we just have to obey these ourselves. $7,000. Oh, let's do it. 8,000. Not 80,000. That would be a bit of a struggle. Our top descent must be soon. There it is, yeah. Good. Right, well, we check those restrictions down to Puma above 6.5. Then we join the ILS Yankee 17 left. Let's go to the page. (1103) 177. That can tune in quite late, actually. It's quite early to be there now, but there we go. Storm Code says, watching from Thailand at 2 AM with an iced coffee because I can't sleep. Excellent. I don't think an iced coffee will help you sleep, but thanks for coming along and I hope you enjoy the stream. A bit of a struggle. Oh, you Brits. Just list them in. Robert says, I was wondering if it was only me, but yes, it seems the UMCA arrival is only loaded for the 3.5s. Yeah. Yeah, it looks, to me, the chart looks quite happy. I mean, does it say 3.5 only? No, 1.7 left and right. Ah. Yeah, no, on arrival, but it's bracketed. Yeah, 1.7 left and right. Don't know. I think what we've done is fine. Big thing here, terrain. So we need to obey these restrictions. There's high terrain underneath us. MSA out here. Look at that. That peak is at 22,800 feet. High chance of turbulence. And look at this. We still haven't found any... look at the view. Incredible. Haven't found any mountains yet. They're all going to be right in the descent. So yeah. So that's the plan. Don't go below these altitudes. If we get any shortcuts, we need to be very careful. I don't want to accept any shortcuts until I know either we're visual and we can see we'll get past it, or we are in this area 19,000 feet MSA, which gives us Puma above 6.5. So yeah, we're going to go below the MSA by following the procedure to the letter. That's the only way to do this. Puma 6.5. Then we've got 5 miles to get down towards Tegub at 5,000. So that's okay because that's actually 8.6 miles away. To lose 1,500 feet, so that's doable. Then from Tegeb, we need to get down to 8 miles. There's 3 miles there to go from 5, and then 8 miles we need to be at 4,000 feet, and then we can intercept the glide slope from this point onwards. It's doable. It's doable. That's 3 miles to lose 1,000 feet is about what you need. So what this is telling me is we need the energy back. So we're gonna. What I mean by energy is we're gonna have to get the airplane with some drag out. So flap 5, basically. There's no drag until we go to flap 5. Flaps 1, it goes 1 then 5, and 1 is just slats. So we need 5. It's like flap 2 on the 320. So that's what we'll do. We'll get the descent started on schedule. We've got the strong headwind, which is loaded into the calculations. Again, it's amazing that the VNAV on this works so well. And then we'll start down, and I'm going to make sure that we've got the speed on the airplane back by the time we're at Pumar and we've got flap 5 out. And then from there, we can go to flap 15. And then if we're at flap 15 by the time we get to Takeoff, we'll have no trouble. Flap 15, then 160 knots down the approach as a maximum. I think that'll be absolutely fine. It's a 3-degree approach. What's the elevation of Santiago? Ooh. Oh, it's quite high. Transition out 10,000. What's the temperature? I don't think it's going to be too hot. .29 degrees. It is hot. So, I think we need to be flat 15 as we get to Pumar, but we'll judge that as we get there. We need certainly the speed back to flat 5 speed as a maximum. Otherwise, we're going to run out of options. We're going to just get too fast down the slope. Envy, it is indeed 3 degrees. So, although all the arrival was exciting, the approach is actually in a bit of a bowl. I think we have some nice scenery around us, but yeah, down a 3-degree ILS, which is what we want to do. And then we've got minima here. We are a Cat D aeroplane. We're going to go with 1750. Using this horrible little dial. I can't stand it. Oh, honestly. There we go, 1750. And it's set both sides. Good stuff. Good, so that's that plan. If we go to the progress page, how much fuel are we arriving with? 11.1 tons. Plenty of fuel in case we need to go somewhere else. We currently have 13 tons, so we're going to lose 3 tons from now. Let's go to the init ref page. We're currently at 166.6, so let's put it in at 163. So let's just round it up to 164 tons. You can put that in there, and then that gives you more accurate landing weights, because that's the weight we expect it to be. So I can drag that into there. It doesn't make much difference. But yeah, there we go. Mateo Chewy, good to see you. Mateo kindly donated $3.82. Thank you so much, Mateo. I hope you're doing well. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming along. Mateo says, how is your biological clock coping with long haul? Yes, that is the question. Thank you for your support, Mateo. Really great to see you again. In terms of how I'm coping with the long haul, I find some things easier than others. I'll put it that way. There's nothing that prepares you for how tired long haul makes you when you're at home or when you're away, just depending on which direction you've gone and what you're used to. You can be really just a whole other level of tired. It's nothing like being tired on short haul flying, that's for sure. Sometimes I cope well. Sometimes I actually surprise myself. I can do an 8-hour time zone change and feel fine. Sometimes I can do a 5-hour change and feel really rough. I'll say that I find going east easier, which I think is quite common, and then going west is more difficult. But there we go. It's enjoyable. It's a whole new challenge, but yeah, my goodness. My goodness. But thanks so much, Mateo. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Jamie, ATC would normally... I would know what height I want to be. The airplane also calculates a height it wants to be, and then air traffic control will tell us to descend as well. So a combination of all three. But you need to know yourself. So you don't necessarily eyeball it, but you pretty much calculate it or have a good idea. Mountains on the horizon. There they are. Yep. We're getting there. By the way, we got these little heaters, which are great. The shoulder heater is like an electric fan heater. And what it does is it's down the pipes here somewhere. It pumps, or it heats up the air being pushed in via this vent. So it's not quite a shoulder heater. It just happens to come out here and it points backwards. But Is it backwards or forwards? Oh, I couldn't tell you now. This looks like backwards. Maybe it's forwards though. I think it's forwards. I think it comes out and points forwards, but it's you can make it hotter with that shoulder heater. But it does. It's just an electric fan heater. The foot heaters, these panels down here on the floor. I would fly, especially at night. I have them both on full the whole way. Chart light you never use because that's now up here, but chance of your own paper charts is very slim. Work table is this little table that pops out. Really handy. I use that light a lot. Your bag will be down here, your flight bag. And then you have got map light here, which shines onto the yoke there. And you can twist and adjust that as you need to. Don't think any of these work in the sim. No. Alan says, I'll be travelling to Singapore from Florida for work this year. That will be quite a trip and time change. That would indeed, yeah. That will be quite something. The thing with long haul flying is you go to somewhere and yes, you'll be there for maybe a day or two. But that's not a long time to adjust. And then you'll have just started. Your body will be shifting to the new time zone. And then you'll go back. And that's where it gets really difficult when you do that a lot. Yep, Boeing does have a tray table. There's several. Tray table here. This folds out and is a little table. Tray table there. Tray table there. And in this armrest is a tray table for the jump seat. So the jump seat actually has the best table for eating because this table folds out across your lap. So that's quite a good place to eat if you're the spare crew. Ed asks, how flexible are the PFD screens in terms of what can be displayed in the horizon? Can the central screens be modified much? It's fantastic. The screens are so flexible. I can, on this navigation display, I can have the engines if I want, or I can put them over there. I can, on the left side, bring up the checklist, and on the right side, bring up the systems pages. I can bring up the CDU up here, or I can put it on the left side instead. And then on the right, bring back my, CDU there, right, ND. And on the lower page, I can have the systems. You can maneuver these in whatever way you can dream up. It's fantastic. It's really good. This PFD we don't touch. We leave this as it is. You can, of course, swap it over. It automatically does in the real airplane if there's a problem, or you can select it here. But that's rare. But yeah, if you needed to move it over, you could do, and then fly with it there if this one was to break. But in terms of these screens, you can maneuver them however you see fit. It looks at first a bit overwhelming, and then actually it's incredibly useful, I think, anyway. Epulette, I am planning to continue the podcast. I know I keep saying this. I don't know why it's proving so difficult. I'm getting back into the flow. We're getting streams a little more regularly. I've got some videos I'm working on. I've got my laptop now, so I can work on it down route, which is great news. And the podcast is just... The question with the podcast is I can either do it on my own, but I would like to keep it up with... guests, and that means a bit of coordination, and that's proving difficult with what I've just described about how much time I'm away and then how much time other people are away, and then the jet lag and so on. So that's to be decided. Or it's not to be decided. The podcast is continuing. It's just taking a long time to get it going again. So yeah, these screens, I mean, this is all from the avionics of the default airplane, don't forget, but it's exactly what I would expect from the real machine, and I'm so impressed they did it right. The ICAS overrides. So once the ICAS is on your side, I can't now put something else there. See, I select systems, CDU, COM, and it doesn't work because the ICAS is there. You have to get rid of that first. Again, brilliant that they've done that. Now, I've got ND on the right, and if I select ND on the left, it goes to full screen. And down here, it's still on the status page. So you can completely hide the CDU. It doesn't have to be displayed. It's great. You can enter information. And what we don't see much in Flight Sim is the communications. We spend a lot of time sending weather requests, messages to the company back and forth and so on. And you can do all of that on these screens without having to use paper and so on. It is great. Skypilot says, love these live streams. Thank you. Got to go out now, so we'll finish the viewings tomorrow. Happy landings. Your videos taught me to fly 320. You're very welcome, Skypilot. Thanks very much. Have a good day. We'll see you next time. AC455, good to see you. AC455 says, one thing I really dislike about the 787 and some other aircraft is the horizon is displayed behind the VS airspeed and altitude. A much further circle horizon displayed on the 73 and A320. It's a good point, and something I used to agree with, but I've got to say nowadays, I really don't mind. It's interesting you point that out though, because of course in the HUD the horizon's cut off. Now I'm trying to think if that's true in the real airplane. I've never noticed. I think it is. So if the wind's too strong, your vector gets dragged off the side and it goes sort of hashed, and then you can press the declutter mode to get a wider view, and then it goes across the full horizon. Yeah, I actually think this is quite good in general. It's an incredibly obvious picture which way up the airplane is, and that sounds daft, but there are situations where that could be important. So that's why I think they've done it. It's common now. It's becoming more and more common, and I think we'll see more of it. The older style is probably a thing of the past. The 787 does have a printer. Yep, like the Airbus has a printer. It's a full size one though. It's much wider. So the paper comes out here, basically A4 width. Not just a small bit here. It's the whole thing. Think about game. He says, one question I'd love to ask you. Is it very close to flying a real plane if you fly in Microsoft Flight Simulator? There are bits of it that are, and there's bits of it that aren't. It's not perfect. The most common thing is, of course, you miss the physical sensations, and the controls are always much heavier on real aircraft than your typical joysticks at home and so on. That says, I watched a great full flight video from approach and departure here on YouTube. It really shows how much time is spent getting weather, updating ATIS, etc. via the box. Oh yeah, loads is done in the box. Yeah. Patrick says, remember your tutorial video for the 7.8 with other real pilot? You called it 787-1000, not 10, but look where you are now. Indeed, yeah, I know. Hard to believe. Someone says, are you allowed to ask the company for the sports scores for the passengers? I've seen so many stories about it. So, I've never understood this. I don't watch much sport, but if I'm going to go home and watch the sport, like a Formula 1 race is the only thing I've ever watched like that. I wouldn't want to know or have it broadcast on the announcement in flight. So I don't typically do that. But I know some people like to be kept up to date. But it seems to me like you're just missing out.
Control 1509, do you have 19 Zulu weather for our destination?
There's mountains coming up. But no, you don't typically contact the company for that stuff. You might hear it over the radio, though. Pilots talking about it, controllers talking about it. Controllers are more likely to tell you. Thrust Simulation says, what is your opinion on the fly-by-wire in this aircraft? I find I have to add a lot of trim when hand flying. Yeah, you do, and I think it's pretty accurate. It's a very stable airplane, but if you start changing the speed, then yeah, you've got to retrim. Richard V, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for coming along. Great to have you here. I still can't hear the controller. How do you know the barrow to set? That barrow that I put there, 1750, we take from our charts. So we're category D. It's all the same minima. That's 1750. Yeah, so next step, let's just have an idea of what we're going to do after landing in case there is a controller. 17 left. It's a huge runway, so we'll go nice low auto brake setting of 3. 3. Flat 25 is a pretty standard configuration for a 7.8. And we're at such a low speed because we're quite light. So 25, 145, 150 approach speeds. Which is about right, actually. Yeah, that seems fair. And then we'll just roll off at one of these exits, Charlie or Bravo. So to the right, and then wherever they send us. So that chart's pinned, ready to go. For that headwind, really pushing us back. I'm curious about this descent point. That's pretty late, I think. But with this strong headwind, it might work out. We should get to the mountains in time for the sun to still be up. If you are enjoying, do please leave a like. It makes a huge, huge difference to the channel. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Flight Dispatch asks, when you're on rest, do you connect to the Wi-Fi? If so, do you have a crew network or have to pay? I haven't heard of an airline that provides special crew free Wi-Fi. They may be out there, but I haven't heard of them. That's a good question. The reality is, if you're on rest, you're usually trying to sleep. I'm using the Thrustmaster TCA and Airbus Quadrant at the moment. Ranbir? No, sorry, not Ranbir. Jamie. I'm going to swap over soon. Hayden, good to see you. I don't think I've said hello to Hayden. Thanks for coming along. Flight Dispatch sees a Dreamliner ahead of them. But there you go. We've done it. We've zoomed past. So, check this time. Well, let's think. We've done the ultra brake, we've done the performance, we've done the big threats here. Is going to be the terrain. I never brief properly on these streams. I feel bad, but it's very hard to do on your own. But yeah, key point is don't get dragged off this arrival. We're going to stick with it and descend strictly with the procedure. That's how we're going to stay clear. We may be visual, which will give us a bit of flexibility, but we're not going to get too silly with that. And then getting the energy back on the approach so that we don't suddenly find ourselves too high and fast here, because that could easily happen. So we'll be right back at 160 knots, I think, flat 15 by the time we pass Pumar. And then we've got the landing, we've got the performance, we've got the approach speed, we've got the minima, all expecting to be good. We've got plenty of fuel to do all of this. Expecting to have a 10.9, currently got 12 tons of fuel. That's plenty. 56 outside. I've seen, it's really strange, at flight level 400, I've seen a temperature of minus 60 something, and I've also seen it at minus 40. It's amazing the difference. That's 20-degree difference up there. The entire stream is a briefing, says Richard Duss. Indeed it is, yeah. Benji asks, do you prefer the flight stick of an Airbus or yoke of a Boeing? I really don't mind. I was saying earlier, I actually very much enjoy landing the 787. So I think I just don't notice the yoke versus the stick. I don't actually think there's a problem with either of them. I think they're both pretty good. With the yoke, you just have to be careful not to over-animate yourself and control it too much. The 7.8 is quite hard to do because, as I said earlier, the 7.8 is very, very responsive. So you'll see Boeing pilots... no, I'll take that back. You'll see pilots occasionally, especially if it's slightly breezy with the yoke, and you'll see the yoke moving around an awful lot. If you do that on the 7.8, because it's going so fast and it's got big flight controls, big roll spoilers as well, it's so responsive, you just feel it. You just be giving yourself turbulence. It's not worth it. The airplane's so big, it's got so much gust suppression, it's got such beautiful big wings and clever landing attitude modifiers and all sorts that you're better off just doing almost nothing and just leaving the pitch at 1 degree, and it just does everything. It's even more stable than the Airbus. I would say that. It is more stable than the Airbus on approach. Yeah, it's very, very good. Remember, on final approach, here we're getting that scenery now, it would even put up the spoilers and things like that in advance to make sure that the airplane sits at 1 degree. It's doing all sorts of clever things. They've got the wing flex just right. They are bendy wings, but yeah, I think that looks really nice. Getting over towards Chile now. Richard says, given it's how much bigger than the A320, is that really a surprise? I suppose not. It should be more stable, but you know, the 380 approaches quite slowly for its size. It's actually a Cat C airplane like the A320 is in terms of its approach speeds. It's in that same category. Not wake turbulence, different thing, but yeah, in terms of approach speeds. So I didn't know what to expect of the 7.8, but yeah, very responsive, but rides turbulence very nicely, very stable. Nick says, I read on the Boeing FCTM that for every X knots you add to VRF plus 5, you decrease flare attitude by 1 degree. Can you clarify? I'm not sure what that means. You can't... You can't... You wouldn't... You can't change the flare attitude by 1 degree on the 7.8 because it's always at 1 degree. I don't think that applies to the 787, Nick. Because it should auto-correct itself to be at 1 degree. To try and always be the same. Cody says, was there any transition from Airbus to Boeing you had to work through? Yes, there were two months of intense work, a lot of study, and then simulator checks. So plenty of work to be done to transfer over. Yeah, a lot. Captain Wazzo, good to see you. Captain Wazzo says, booked a trip on an A350 to Toronto in the Easter holidays. Love that plane. Can't wait. I doubt the Anybil's A350 will be released by then, but the real thing will certainly whet my appetite. Indeed it will. Yeah, enjoy that, Captain Wazzo. 350 is a big machine. Very, very modern flight deck. Doesn't have windows as big as the 7.8 though, does it? I'm going to get all defensive now of the 7.8. We can't get out, but there we go. Why isn't the FPV on the horizon? It is. That's the horizon. This is the 3 degree line. Ah, that's a good point. Why is this horizon line not level on the horizon? Now, it's a bit extreme, but we are at 40,000 feet. The reason is the curvature of the Earth. So that is level, but the Earth bends away beneath us. So yeah, because as we're lower down, this line will actually line up with the horizon. Good spot. Peter has a good question. Here in the EU, in normal terms, landing lights and seatbelts are disabled and enabled at 10,000 feet. At what altitude do you do these when the airport is at 9,500 feet above sea level? Yeah, that's just a practicality thing. So, although it's usual for lights and seatbelts to be done at 10,000 feet, what it really is a time to landing. So, an airport that's that high up, it would be confusing. You'd have to remember to do it early. But yeah, so a long-haul aircraft, you probably turn on the seatbelt signs earlier than 10,000 feet because you want to do 10 minutes is not enough time for cabin crew to prepare the cabin. There's too many things to do. You've got fancy seats and all sorts and too many passengers walking around. So it's a timed landing, so you would just do it at 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever your airline's procedure is. That's the difference. Good spot, though. Good question. We're coming up on descent. It knows these restrictions, so what I'm actually going to do is put in the last restriction on the arrival, which is 6,500 feet. I won't change it to 6,500. I'm just going to put it in for now. Now, I know we are technically with air traffic control, but I haven't been able to hear them for a while. But yeah, so the airplane has the arrival and it has these restrictions, and we've checked them. So now we will allow it to fly those. The real aircraft would show us on the vertical situation display as well, which is an incredibly handy feature. Flight Dispatch says, got to say the 350-1000 is my favourite. Love the VA livery, but I'm biased. There you go. C. Gonzalez says, big windows indeed, but passenger comfort not too good with 9 abreast sitting in the 787. Glad you're learning stuff. Let's do it. Excellent.
Alpha Golf 1055, contact Ezeiza on 134.5.
Ian says, on a recent Qatar flight, it was something like 20,000 when the seatbelts came on. Exactly. I'm assuming that was a long-haul flight. Yeah, 20,000 feet. Here we go. Let's enjoy the view. And so now I've set 6.5. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to tell it. It's in VNAV path, not out. Remember, if it was in out, I would need to do something. And that would look like this. But we're in path, so I just press VNAV. And you'll notice as well, when I go to out, hold, it brings up, opens the speed window. Now we're choosing the speed. But VNAV controls the speed and therefore the profile. VNAV path, it would just start itself down at the top of descent. Flight dispatch says, when at work, I can see aircraft on approach. Some turn landing lights on when on short finals. Is this airline SOP or pilot's discretion? So flight dispatch, that is a relatively recent development in Airbus flying. Because the Airbus landing lights stick out into the wind and they retract at 10 when you turn them off and retract them. Some airlines like them to be off until you're on the approach. Because they think they're just adding drag and therefore it's like putting a little speed brake out. Now, I actually don't think they make as much difference as is worth it particularly, but that's a common thing now on airlines. I'm sure it does make a difference, but I think it's pretty small because they're underneath the wing, not on top of the wing. Something funny says, do you think there'll be a Payware 787 since this is already so good it won't take much development? I don't know. No one's announced one, so I don't think it's coming. We never got a good Payware. No, I take that back. I don't think we'll see a Payware 7.8 anytime soon. No one's announced it. There were a couple on the X-Plane, but yeah, we haven't even seen one in the old Microsoft Flight Simulators, so I really doubt it. I think we are incredibly lucky, and I'm particularly, given my YouTube channel, I am very lucky that Working Title upgraded this to this standard for free. It's remarkable to have the screens, to have the HUD working just so close to the real aircraft. This is Payware quality. I maintain that. I think this is well worth the upgrade. If you want to fly the 787, then you wouldn't be disappointed by upgrading to this version. And the only thing that's lacking in the default aircraft is the visual model, and that's brought to the new level by Horizon and Kuo and some extra nice features. Here we go. VNAV speed, throttles to idle. Now the real aircraft closes them much slower than that. It takes forever, and then it gets itself high, just like this. Let's hold. So what it's doing is now it's just it's let go. Hold means it's no longer manipulating the throttles. Oh, that's my bad. Apologies, Manta 337. AFM request descent.
Up to 370, please.
Zen flight level 370, Manta 337. Apologies. Right, let's put it into hold. The controller is still watching us. We'll put it to 370. Now this is we're going to get incredibly high, incredibly quickly here. And then I'm just going to go flitch. A bit aggressive. It should only do 2,000 feet per minute that close. But there it is. Thrust, flitch speed, and out. Right, well, we need to start slowing down. Or we're going to run out of options here. Let's have a look. Yeah. No, there's nothing to see below us. We do need to descend. High speed descent, flight level 240, Manta 337. Thank you. 240. There we go. That's more like it. Flitch is going to be the highest speed. 240. Wind the speed up. Idle, flitch speed. This airplane has too much drag. The real airplane does not descend this easily. Not even close. That's definitely something in the flight model I've noticed. 240, by the way, is our profile there. So actually, we'll do flitch for a bit. But look at that. You'd never get to these. You'd never correct this that easily. You'd need to use the speed brakes. So there we go. We can go back to VNAV now. We're coming back onto profile. Hold VNAV speed. Free speed, Manta 337. Thank you. The Curo dive bombs as well, so the captain was it? Yeah. It's just there's just too much drag. The real airplane, especially in the lower levels, it won't even do. I've seen it do 600 feet per minute and then start to accelerate. So here's a question: what are we going to do now? We're above profile, about 1600 feet high and getting higher. How are we going to fix this? Well, we're in VNAV speed. If I open the window, I can allow the airplane to then go faster. It's in hold, so the thrust levers are idle. If I was to add power now, I can actually push these thrust levers around, even without disengaging the auto thrust, because it's in hold mode, you see. So if I add more power, because it's controlling the rate of descent via the speed. You can see it's in VNAV speed. So if I add power now, I can trickle the power on, and you can do this in the real airplane. They're not engaged at this point. The clutches are off. It reduces that rate of descent like that. And if you add too much, you'd eventually level off. I'm not sure if you'd start going up again or not. But anyway, if I take it off, it will just drop down, and it will, once it re-engages, recaptures that path, it will go to VNAV path. And that should get rid of the speed window. It doesn't get rid of it, we get rid of it. There we go. Hold VNAV path. So now it's fast, but it's on the right profile. Now, instead of prioritizing the pitch to maintain a speed, it's prioritizing the VNAV path because it's regained it. So it's going to just sit fast unless I use the speed brakes to slow it down. But I'm quite happy with the extra speed right now. Let's enjoy the views. Look at that. Unreal. Wow. This is a real arrival. This is what pilots do every day. Incredible. 1228, Manta 327. Thank you, goodbye. Okay, well, we'll just carry on. We're at the front. We're the fastest. Yeah, the visuals are unreal. I totally agree with that. Breathtaking. Oh, what a luxury. Wow. Benji says, what descent rate would it start to become uncomfortable for passengers? There's speed VNAV out. So it's upset now because it can't follow the path. So it's stuck in out. If I was to wind that down. It's now out. It's off the path. So if it stayed in VNAV path, it would have leveled off anyway to make the restriction. And now the next restriction, low stand above 18,000, but the path is below us. So what I'm going to do is have to tell it to carry on descending. So click that in, and it goes VNAV speed. And we're back in that same position of earlier, idle VNAV speed. And now it's never going to regain that profile. It's just going to sit above it unless we use the speed brakes or increase the speed. Now let's put in, and this is, by the way, is the absolute hardest part of learning this airplane, has been this vertical stuff, this vertical management. It's incredibly different to the Airbus. 6.5, and I'm just going to open the speed window, get the nose down. But again, the real airplane does not pitch down that aggressively, and it does not descend as well. It is just a glider. Incredible views, my goodness. Oh, what's happened here? Bit of turbulence, perhaps. Oh no, it regained the path. There we go. Close the window. Just leave it to carry on. We don't want the engines throttling up too much. Beautiful. I don't use SimFly, no. What if I want something like Airbus Managed Climb Descent System Code? What should I press? That is LNAV and VNAV, what we've got here. LNAV, VNAV, path. This is the managed modes. Nick F says, discovered a few days ago that the reason hold comes on during takeoff is that during an engine failure, the thrust levers won't compensate, which is pretty neat. Yeah, I suppose that's to do with the fact that they don't... The Boeing, although you're setting a rated thrust, the thrust levers would actually sit at that rating. I suppose if it was in normal mode, it might try and drive it? No, because it's in a thrust reference. I'm not entirely convinced about the hold mode. It's quite fun at times, but yeah, it's a bit of a strange... It makes you realise how clever the design of the Airbus thrust levers actually is. Right, well, talking about it earlier, it's definitely a bit turbulent here. We're getting close. We'll put the seatbelt signs on. And we should have done. So before we do our descent, or we would have done, there's a descent checklist, of course. So I was typically talking about it. You would do the cancel recall when we know we've violated that checklist thing. And we've done the data. So let's go to the checklist. You don't have to do this selecting a checklist. It's very clever. It will automatically be at the next one. And if it isn't, you've missed one. Sensor recall we've checked. Auto brakers at 3. Landing data we've got VREF 25, 145, minimum 1750. Approach briefing completed. Descent checklist complete. Let's go back to ND. Good stuff. Now it made that restriction, so it's just going to absolutely dive it down to the next one. Again, no way the airplane is going to do this. It would just have too much energy. And what is the QNH? Sorry about that. Just trying to sort something out here. I'm convinced I pressed something I shouldn't have on the streaming software. So let me just check. Is it still working? That's a bit worrying. Just grab the QNH. It was 1014. That's me checking it. I'm just loading up on my phone to make sure the stream is running properly. Still good, says Patrick. Right. Anyway, 11,000 feet at Safel. That's all working out. We are coming in fast now, but the speed restrictions are going to start to kick in, hopefully. Flight Dispatch 320. Thanks so much for $25 tip. Really Very generous. Thank you. Flight Dispatch says, I've learned so much about Airbus from the channel and now gaining great knowledge on 787. Really enjoyed the stream and thank you for taking the time out of your jet lag schedule to entertain us with our joint passion of aviation. You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much for flying along and thanks for your enthusiasm. And thanks, of course, for that very, very generous donation and supporting the channel, Flight Dispatch. Really, really appreciate it. That's really very kind of you. Thank you so much. 1014 for the QNH. Tom Corwin, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. There you go. We've survived the Andes. That was a short little bit of the flight, eh? But now it's an energy management game. Remember, we want to arrive... was it Pumar, wasn't it? Let me check the charts. Make sure we have that right. I will start the recording software. Indeed. Good spot. Thank you. Pumar 65. Yeah, so Pumar is where we want to have slowed down by. Okay, good stuff. Oh. There we go. So it's leveled at 11 for Safel. If we go to the legs, we'll see these restrictions. Now the next one is 8, above 8 at Ugola, and it's in magenta because it's the next one that it's obeying. It is in VNAV pass. I'm a little curious as to why it's not slowing down. It has come back to 250 though. It obviously thinks it can do fine. Look at that, 18 knot tailwind now for the approach here. More reason to have the energy back. So with the Boeing, you're not realistically going to fly the whole approach fully managed. At some point around now, you're going to think about slowing down. Let's run that approach checklist. Altimeters, wrong QNH 1014. Approach checklist complete. Back to the ND. Let's open up the speed window and start slowing down. The slowest I'm allowed to put it to is the up speed. And let's start going down towards 8,000. Oh, there it goes. But I'm just going to take over. So VS 8,000. I'll do 1,500 feet per minute. And I want it to decelerate back to the up speed. Slowest we can go is the up until we put the flaps out. In the Airbus, we could select lower. We can't do that on this. So we're a bit high now. Speed breaks out. 2,000 feet per minute. I'm going to do feet per minute because in Flitch, it will just nosedive. And we've got a lot of terrain around us. I just don't want to do that. Look at that terrain there. Incredibly effective speed brakes. Look at them. Now I need to check on the real airplane whether they all deploy like that. But either way, when you deploy them, you really feel it. You get pushed into your seat. It's a remarkable feeling. Much stronger than the Airbus ones. Thank you again, Flight Dispatch, for your very kind tip. Really appreciate it. There we go. We're below the profile now. Back to 1,200 feet per minute. Speed's back. Time to start configuring. So we'll go to flap 1. Flap 1. It's quite a fiddly flap lever. I do think the Airbus design is better. Little lever underneath. And then back to the 1 speeds. Oh, 60 knot tailwind. Let's get flap 5 out. Flap 5 limiting speed 250 knots. So that's going to get the drag. And now you see the trailing edge start to droop. And that's the first bit of drag. And you really feel that. And we can set that to 5, 180 knots. Let's get the speed brakes out. No, I don't think they deployed that much, but I don't know. They are very strong. You just can't see them from the flight deck, of course. I don't have payware for Santiago. I looked for Buenos Aires. I didn't look for Santiago. Yeah, it's going to be a shame, I can tell. See here, our decelerometer, as I call it, that shows us we're decelerating because it's below the wing of our flight path vector. And here's our speed error tape, which shows that we're fast because it's above the wing. So because this is below, this error tape will reduce until they match. That's 8,000, but we need to be above 6.5. So let's put that in the window. In fact, we can just put platform in now. Let's get going down. We're above the glide slope, so we're going to need at least 1,500 feet per minute, which means we're going to need the speed brakes. Let's go to flat 15. There it is. That's a lot of drag now. And we'll wind the speed back to the flat 15 speed, which tends to be about 160 knots when you're at approach weights. You can see here, this is our VNAV guide, and this is the glide slope. So we're slightly above the glide slope. We're a bit more above the VNAV, but they're at different scales, so it's not always that clear. Anyway, platform 5,000 at Takeoff. So let's put 5,000 in the window. That's going to be the safest option from here. I think energy is actually not looking too bad. And we get the green banana, so we can see that we're going to level off at 5. The speed's under control. If I put the speed brakes away, we're doing 1,500 feet per minute. It might start to accelerate without speed brakes at 1,500 feet per minute. We shall see. You can... yeah, NV, it's pretty much the same. You can barely see the wingtip. Obviously, the shorter variants, you can see a little bit more. But yeah, you can see about this much. You can't see any of this stuff. Look at this arrival. Beautiful place. Wow. Oh, what am I doing? There we go. So we're getting below the glide slope. We have accelerated to 180. Get those speed brakes back out again. And localizer's there. It's identified 14 miles out on the ILS. Let's arm the localizer. We have to do localizer first. There it is, localizer. And now let's arm the approach. Let's wind back on that vertical speed and capture from below. Tailwind's disappeared now. Santiago traffic, Manta 337. We are 13 miles out, ILS runway 17 left. There's the glide slope. We didn't spend much time talking about the go around, but you go straight ahead to Pair 4, and we're going to climb to an altitude of 5,000 feet. So localizing glide slope. I'm going to leave the go around altitude of 5,000 feet in, and we're at 160 knots. Energy's back. Let's see. I think now it should hold 160 knots without accelerating too much. I am recording, so we shall see how it goes. Good stuff. And you can see already our 3-degree line is lined up with the roughly with the start of the runway, and as we get closer that should sit at the start of the touchdown zone, and the flight path vector will drive towards that. So when the flight path vector is on the 3-degree line and the 3-degree line is on the runway, you're all lined up with the touchdown zone vertically. Laterally, you just need your vector on the runway, don't you? Of course, that's not quite true, because of course if you could be off to the side and line up. I could line it up with that runway now, and it wouldn't mean I'm on line with it perfectly, but there we go. You can see that we're fast and we're still accelerating. So I can see from here, I don't even need to look at my airspeed, because I know I'm fast. I've got the speed aero tape. So I'm just going to put the speed brakes out. Speed brakes are deploying. And now that should trend down. It will once the nose comes up. And now that aero tape will reduce. 2,500 feet above the runway. It's time to lower the gear. Gear down. That's going to be enough drag for us. You can hear the engine spooling up almost immediately. Speed brakes away. Let's go to flap 20. You don't use these intermittent stages at this stage on the approach. Flap 20 speed. Let's arm the speed brakes now, because I find that quite fiddly to do in the sim. There they go. So it should say speed brake armed. There it is. And we'll go flap 25. Not 30, please. 25. And then we go to 0 plus 5. And there we go.
Santiago traffic, Speedbird 7 Whiskey on a 10-mile final for runway 17 left minimum speed.
4 miles out. Now, this is interesting. The nose is very low. I'm expecting it to rise. There we go. That it wouldn't normally drop the nose that much. The airplane would do all its clever things with the speed brakes and so on. Santiago traffic, Manta 337. Final approach, 5 miles, runway 17 left. But it's useful when you're on your own. Right. Here we go then. So, just like the default 7.8, the nose is too low. It's 1 degree. It's essentially always just above the horizon. Yeah, something I've noticed with them. That's where it should be. Oh yeah, lights. That's all we need really, just the wing landing lights. Right. Yeah, it's getting so quite unstable here. Okay, looking good. There you go. I think the eye tracker works. There's the runway. This is declutter mode. I love declutter mode. I always use it. Right, autopilot off. So wind is coming in from the right. 2 whites to reds, driving towards that touchdown zone. Gonna need a little left rudder. Left rudder now. There we go. I can hear the speed brakes up. Oh. So, speed brakes up. Reverses. Come on, reverses. My reverses are not working for some reason. But speed brakes are up. Well, they did come up. Oh dear.
Santiago traffic, speedway 7
They definitely made the noise.
final for runway 17
I don't
left.
know what's going on there, but the auto brakes worked. You can see our deceleration rate here. And 60 knots a little bit fast. Let's just take over. No, that's not worked at all. We can't vacate 60 knots. So you'd normally be able to just disconnect the auto brake with your manual brakes, but of course the simulator does not allow me to do that. Right, we have to make it to the ends now. This has just got interesting for our colleague. I don't know what's going on with my sim right now. I've had that happen a few times where it makes the noise of the auto brake, but it makes the noise of the speed brake, but it doesn't do it. But anyway, here we go. Welcome to Santiago. Brakes must be cooking. Yeah, they'd have taken a bit more strain on that one. They're very good though. You're welcome, Patrick. 374. Yeah, that felt a little bit, probably a little bit high in the flare there. Oh, no, we didn't do that. Anyway, we didn't have... What I'm very pleased about is we didn't have all the outrageous stuttering we had last time. There is some stutter. I can feel it for sure. I'm sure you all can as well. But it's, yeah, big step up from where we were. I wonder what's going on with the simulators at these points. I don't know if it was the traffic or what it was. But anyway, thank you all for coming along. If you did watch and enjoy the approach, please do leave a like on your way out. It makes a big difference. We have a replay coming shortly. Santiago, traffic, runway vacated, runway 17 left. I can see that flight special already down. So to make the HUD line up with the runway, you need to press the declutter button on the yoke, which is this one here. Now, I'm not going to do the after landing. Actually, I could do. Sirius says was a pretty hard one. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. We'll have a look at the replay. The feet per minute number you see is prone to all sorts of errors. But also, it wasn't a great landing in terms of feet per minute, but I think it was fine otherwise. In the touchdown zone, pointing the right way, the nose was in the right place. Just floated a little bit high for a minute.
Runway vacated to runway 17 left, and we'll be holding for the Manchester.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Right, so I'll do the after landing flow. So you put the speed brakes in when you know what you're doing, and then you're going to come up here. You're going to make sure the anti-ice is in the right place. Put the lights that you want. So we just have the text lights. That's what you need in the daylight, really. Flaps up. Make sure the weather radars are off. We didn't use them on this flight. Put the auto brake to off. It would have been in disarm. And transponder. Go to transponder. And there we go. And then you can run the after landing checklists, which isn't on here. We'll taxi past our colleague. All our 787 glory. Yeah, so is 374 a hard landing? I don't think so. But I don't think that was a hard landing. I'll definitely tell you that. I don't know if that 374 number is true or not. That's just something. Yeah, something else to. We don't do it. We do it on G-force. And in fact, Boeing don't really describe a G-force that is too much. What Boeing do is it's basically a pilot report. I don't know where I'm taxiing actually. I can see our colleague over there. We'll go in on this side here. Now that's a bit fast. Bit of thrust needed around this turn. Dougal says I stopped using landing rate monitors in the sim. Yeah, I might turn it off. I feel like it definitely contributes to me focusing, because I know what usually. No, I didn't manage there, but you can trick it into a good landing by just floating. It likes to float, and if you have a beautiful smooth touchdown, but it was quite last minute, or you didn't float before, it tends to give you a higher feet per minute, and it's not particularly useful. And it used to be that people would guess and stuff like that. I don't think anyone really talks about it much these days, so I might get rid of it. But anyway, we'll see the replay. That's going to give it away more. And yet they don't account for runway slope. That is also true. So if the runway's got a down slope, it would look worse. Right. Let's just park here. I don't think we're going to fit on these stands anyway. Approaching the stand, we would turn the lights off. We'll take this one with the road. Actually, no, we can't. We'll take the next one. Bit of oomph needed around the turn. As I say, 7.8 does run out of steam. And we're definitely not fitting here. This is where I sometimes think of the 7.8 as a small long-haul airplane, but actually when you see it like this, it's a beast. It's a big, big, big machine. Very happy about the sim working though. By the way, what I just did there, see me playing with the flight controls, you can't do that on the 7.8 after landing. We're talking about how complex it is. What you need to do is leave it alone, because it runs all sorts of self-tests and it will move controls and things like that, so you have to just not touch the yoke during the taxi-in. Anyway, here we are. We'd have turned on the APU and we'd shut it down at this point, but I'm actually going to deploy the flaps, arm the speed brakes, split up the engines a bit, actually I'll just give it a second to run the flaps and then we'll do the replay. But thank you so much for coming along. Like I say, please do leave a like on the way out if you enjoyed it. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to disconnect from VATSIM. Thank you to those who flew along with us. Really appreciate the company. We're off VATSIM and let's go to replay. We'll go flaps 25. It's getting very confused because I put it way too far back. Right. So compared to my first stream in the 7.8, I think the final approach was a bit more stable. It's still too nose low. This airplane, we should be at 1 degree. I think this is the landing attitude modifier. Is such an advanced system. I don't know if it's modelled. Thanks, Listerman. Thanks, Ed. Glad you enjoyed it. So into the flare. Yeah, we just sat high, held it, rudder, settle down. Don't think that would have felt too shocking. And yeah, in the touchdown zone. Just a little bit high. I wonder what the difference is. But yeah, that livery, glorious. I gotta say, it plays quite nicely with my replay software. I'm quite impressed. I think the flight controls even work in the correct sense. So you can see we had that drift on. Love the lights on the horizon. Right wing down. And there we go, on the centre line. A big thing about the 787, I have noticed, is on a dry runway in particular, if you land without taking the drift off, the wheels really rattles. You really feel it. So you do want to get it lined up with the runway as best you can. And it's slightly easier to do with the HUD, but it looks more extreme. I'll show you what I mean. Yeah, so let's just put it back a bit. Resume replay. So what you can see here is that we've got drift to the right. This is where the nose of the airplane is. So 184, whatever that is, 183. That is where we're actually moving. So the difference between these two is the drift angle, the crab angle. What we want to do is, in the flare, you use the rudder, and effectively you're bringing this point, the nose of the airplane, over the flight path vector. Of course, if you do that too early or for too long, you'll start to drift off. And that's because I was a bit high here and we were floating. I needed to get the airplane down a little bit so we don't start going left, because there's not much room. Remember, this is a big airplane. So you'll see, I don't consciously do this. I'm just removing the drift the normal way. But what actually happens is, here comes the rudder, and now that nose drives round to match where the airplane's actually moving, and that means we were in line at touchdown. You can see me wobbling around here a bit. It's still very grippy after touchdown, and also we still have the old like I say, we had issues with our speed brakes and reversers on this one. Couldn't get the reversers at all. Don't know what happened there, but anyway, yeah, as an interesting thing about the HUD, it shows you all this stuff. I quite like it. Right, let's put it back on approach. Not that much on approach. Let's put it. We'll put it there. Riyadh says, I just joined and he's actually taken off. I hope it was a good stream. Thanks so much for coming along. Indeed, we did well there in terms of getting away. Right. Yeah, so the whole landing feet per minute thing, I'm not too worried about. I might remove that. I don't think it's particularly useful. But yeah, that definitely wasn't the smoothest one ever. But hopefully interesting nonetheless. Right, what view should we have? I think that's going to be the view, really, isn't it? We've got the mountains. What's on that side? Mountains. What an amazing approach. Yeah, I think we'll do that. Let me just check the speed brakes are armed. You know what's coming next. Outro music. Yeah, speed brakes are armed. That's good stuff. So, what I was left to say is thank you all so much for coming along. Thank you for flying along. Thank you for chatting. Thank you for the very kind words and the kind comments. Really appreciate it. And I hope it's been interesting. We got yeah, quite a lot of 787 related topics covered there, I think. More tutorials are on the way, I promise. I know I keep saying that. It's just a case of fitting them in around the streams, and I've prioritized the streams a little bit lately because I was prioritizing the videos, so we'll get that mix sort of sorted out soon. But yeah, thanks so much. Thank you as well to those who've so kindly donated towards the channel. Really appreciate it. And thank you, of course, to the moderators for looking after us. And yeah, Matthew Presley, good to see you. You know who doesn't care about landing feet per minute? Pilots, exactly. Yeah, it's just not a number I don't think I've ever seen, the feet per minute. But yeah, there we go. All I'll say now is thank you again for coming along. Please do keep safe and well. We'll see you again in another video live stream. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.